that feeling in a while.
So a week ago. Can I just
Just
keep it
got
right
back
back?
next, it had just.
And then we had
too.
school Tuesday, and work Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then
Good evening, everyone.
yesterday.
Good evening. Before I officially call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, I wanted to take a moment just to run through the agenda so everyone has sort of a sense of what's going on in tonight's meeting. First of all, thank you to BevCam. Kim is here and ready to roll in the booth. And as always, we really appreciate you being here, Kim, and our friends at BevCam making sure that folks can follow along with what's happening in our meetings, whether they're here or they're at home or streaming from wherever they want to watch us from. So thank you, Kim. On our agenda tonight, we have one comment from a citizen speaker, so we'll go to that at the beginning. We have two posted public hearings. We have one at 7:30 on Order 120. This is a proposed order approving an appropriation for a proposed taking by eminent domain of properties on Cabot Street. We have an 8 o'clock public hearing, joint public hearing with the Planning Board. This is related to proposed zoning to rezone 8 Summit Avenue. I will say this again in the meeting, but members of the public here and interested in speaking in either of these public hearings can come up at any point during the meeting and add your name to the list for the one that you're interested in. It's in front of Ms. Kent, our city clerk, and you can come up at any point, and we'll take citizen speakers' comments from the public in the order that you're listed. And then we have some routine business to take care of. We'll take a break for some subcommittee work, and we'll come back to take care of what we have coming out of subcommittee. So with that, I will officially call to order the regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, May 1st, 2023, 7 o'clock p.m. Ms. Kent, will you please call the roll?
Bowen? Here.
Crowley?
Here.
Feldman? Here. Houseman?
Here.
Rand?
Here.
Rotundo?
Here.
St. Hilaire? Sweeney?
Here.
And Flowers.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Kent. Councilor Crowley, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilor Crowley. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge a few members of our city staff who are here with us. Brian Ailes, our city finance director, is here this evening. Thank you, Mr. Ailes. And then we have members of the solicitor's office team, our city solicitor, Stephanie Williams, and assistant city solicitors, Jesse Dole and Beth Oldmixon as well. Thank you all for being here with us. Go right to our first public speaker, Mr. Johnson. I don't actually see him here. Let's do this. I'll entertain a motion to take our agenda out of order if Mr. Johnson's just running a little late.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0, and that allows us to go to acceptance of minutes of previous meetings. We have two sets of meeting minutes to approve. I'm going to entertain motions on them separately because the second set does have one correction, which I will note here. We have a corrected set of minutes. But the first is our regular city council meeting from March 20th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve that set of minutes?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. The second set of minutes is from our regular city council meeting from April 18th, 2023. There has been a correction on page 3 about how the vote was recorded on Order 72. The corrected minutes read, a motion to approve was made and seconded. A vote was taken and the motion carried 6-2. Bowen and Flowers opposed. So thank you to Councilor Bowen for catching that correction. Thank you to Ms. Dixon for making sure it was corrected. Is there a motion to approve this set of meeting minutes as corrected and read aloud?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0 as corrected. Ms. Kent, let's go to communications from His Honor the Mayor, please.
Order number 121, Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly Emergency Management Task Force has been awarded a $5,000 Citizen Courts Program Community Emergency Response Team grant from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. These grant funds will support community preparedness and resiliency by providing emergency services at the municipal and regional level. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and Mayor approval before any grant, earmark, donation, or gift to the city can be expended for its prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve the grant by acting on this matter at your upcoming meeting. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 122. Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly has been awarded a $23,700 grant from the Massachusetts Cultural Council to support local cultural council LCC. This public funding is provided to promote education, diversity, inclusion in the arts, and science to foster a rich cultural life for all Massachusetts residents and contribute to the vitality of our communities and economy. The Massachusetts Cultural Council receives funding from the Mass Legislation and the National Endowment for the Arts. The local cultural council program was established in 1982. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and Mayor approval before any grant, earmark, donation, or gift to the city can be expended for the prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 123. Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly has received a vehicle donation from Jonathan Palm, who is donating his 2007 Nissan Pathfinder to the Beverly Fire Department. This vehicle is intended to be used for the Jaws of Life training exercises. The estimated Kelly Blue Book value is $4,148. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and Mayor approval before any grants, earmark, donation, or gifts to the city can be expended for their prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this donation by acting on this matter. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property. Communications from other city officers and boards, please.
Order number 124 from Finance Director Brian Ailes, a request for approval to use FY 2023 appropriated funds toward the payment of 2 prior year invoices totaling $60,980 and $60,984.
And 4 cents. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 125, from the Assistant Solicitor Jesse Dole, a proposed order approving the transfer of the care, custody, management, and control of 9 city-owned parcels of land located in the area of Pole Swamp Lane to the Conservation Commission pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 126 from the City Clerk, a new application for 1 livery license for Santo Pichardo Martinez from 26 Grant Street, Apartment 3.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 127 from the City Clerk, a renewal application for a second-hand junk dealer license for Lena Nagazian Gallery at 130 Cabot Street, Unit 2.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 128 from the City Clerk, a renewal application for a second-hand junk dealer's license for Beverly Bootstraps at 198 Rantoul Street.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs as well.
Order number 129 from the City Clerk, a renewal application for a second-hand junk dealer license for Neon Group, Inc., DBA Cash Point, located at 77 Bridge Street.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 130 from the City Clerk's Office, a renewal application for pawnbroker's license for the Neon Group, Inc., DBA Cash Point, located at 77 Bridge Street.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs as well.
Order number 131 from the City Clerk, a renewal application for an ice cream truck vendor permit for Stephen Wright, 116B Collins Street, Danvers, Mass.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 132 from the City Clerk, a renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Anwa Catabeth at 4 Woodland Court in Lawrence, Mass.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs as well.
Order number 133 from the City Clerk's Office, renewal application for petroleum storage registrations for 2023.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. Let's go to communications, applications, and petitions, please.
Order number 134 from Adeline Scheffler of the Director of Beverly Food Collaborative requesting permission to hold the Beverly Farmers Market for 2023.
We can actually entertain this motion on the floor. Counselor Rand.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you, Counselor Rand. Someone will come get you when we're done. So members of the council, we can entertain a motion on 134 if there's a motion to approve, and then if we have a second, we'll take any discussion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you very much. Any comments or discussion on 134, which is the request to hold the Beverly Farmers Market? Counselor Houseman.
Only that we're very fortunate to have an organization like this in our city.
Thank you,
Certainly
Counselor.
support this.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bowen.
Thank you. My only question was how the construction happening around the area this summer might impact the farmers market and how we can support ensuring that people have access all summer. So I think that's probably a flag to the National Grid community group because the private construction seems to be wrapping up, but the National Grid construction will be coming right through there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor Bowen. That's a great comment. Counselor Houseman.
If I may, we're meeting this Thursday, so we'll have an opportunity to talk about that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Counselor Bowen, I think a great note too that we can also, as a council, we could just reach out to Ms. Schreffler as well, and if there are ways the council can support that access. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. So all those in favor of approving 134?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. Would someone be willing to get Counselor, oh, thank you very much. Thank you for the assist.
7-0.
Thank you. Thank you. Counselor Crowley has correctly noted that out of habit I said 8-0, but 134 is actually approved 7-0. Thank you, Counselor Crowley. Thank you for that quick count. You're right on it.
How was I take my shoes off? Sorry.
Welcome back, Counselor Rand.
Thank you.
Let's go to 135, please, Ms. Kemp.
Order 135 from the National Grid, Plan 307-58714 to install electric conduits on Lovett Street.
Thank you very much. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services to set a public hearing. We do have a little bit of time. I would entertain a motion for us to take a brief break to begin some committee work. Our public hearing will begin at 7:30, so committees can begin your work. Anything that isn't resolved, please be back in this room at 7:30. Members of the public, also a reminder, this and any other time is a great opportunity for you to come up if you would like to speak in either public hearing. The sign-up sheets are here in front of the city clerk. You can add your name to either of those, or both. You can certainly speak in both. And we'll take public speakers in the order that they're listed. This is not your last opportunity to do so. You can come up at any point. So I'd entertain a motion to take a brief break for some committee work.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That time it carries 8-0. So
I was gonna ask, where do you wanna go?
let's have public services on the bench. They already knew. And let's have finance and property in the committee room. Legal affairs can stay here. And we'll resume with our full council just before 7:30 for the public hearing. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Okay, sorry, Kim, you're all set? Thank you. Okay, call to order the Legal Affairs Committee. We are going to start with order number 102, which is an appointment for Purvi Harley, of 8 James Street to serve on the Human Rights Committee. And, no, she is not here, but I know her fairly well, and actually she does some work for Green Beverly too, so I have no concerns about this appointment, and I think she's going to be a great addition. I don't know if either of you wanted to reach out, or if you are comfortable going forward.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay,
Yeah, I am as well. She
Okay.
seems very qualified.
all right, I would accept a motion to, and actually, let me say this right, I should be reading like exactly what it's like here, right? So, recommend, okay, all right, I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
Might as well do it right. Okay, I would accept the motion to recommend the council approve the reappointment.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Okay.
You said appointment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I did. Okay. Okay, we're gonna hold off on 125 for a minute. Okay, order number 126, which is a new application for one livery license for Santo Picardo Martinez, and I believe you guys are here with us today, right? Okay, and this is, it's my understanding that this is an application for a new license, and it's associated with Uber Black, is that correct? Which I've never taken, it's very fancy. Do we have any questions from committee members?
I don't.
No? Is there anything, since you're here, is there anything you'd like to share with us about your application or your business? No? Okay, any questions for us? No? Okay, excellent. Okay, I would accept an order to recommend the council, recommend the license be granted.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. Okay, order number 127 is a renewal application for a secondhand dealer's license for Alina Nargozian Gallery. And is Lena here?
I don't think the renewals need.
Okay, excellent.
It's been years.
Okay, any questions from committee members?
Nope.
All right, I would accept a motion to recommend that the license be renewed, granted.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye, motion passes 3-0. Order number 128, a renewal application for a secondhand dealer's license for Beverly Bootstraps.
I got a question now.
You have lots of questions here, right?
No.
Questions or comments? Okay, I would accept a motion to recommend that the license be granted.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye, motion passes 3-0. Order number 129 is a renewal application for a secondhand dealer's license for Nyan Group, Inc., doing business as Cash Point. And these guys sadly moved up into your neighborhood, Council Rotundo, left the downtown. Questions or comments?
I don't, you just kind of hit it. We kind of went through this, Ms. Kent already, correct? When they did the moving, so this is just the timing, same as, okay, I don't have
Yeah,
any
and
questions.
Detective Prince is always
Right,
aware of what's going on and will let us know if there's
Yep.
something. Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, they were just in here, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I would accept a motion to recommend the license be granted.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Order number 130, a renewal application for a pawnbroker's license for Nine Group, also doing business as Cash Point. Questions or comments? Okay, I would accept a motion to recommend the license be granted.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Okay. Order number 131 is a renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Stephen Wright. Any questions? Counselor Sweeney?
Thank you. Just one. I noticed in the cover letter that there was mention of approval required by the police department. Is that something that we are still waiting for?
I believe, yes. I believe the chief signed off on it, but we are waiting for the picture that they put on the truck that Christine told me this morning. So they take their picture, and then it goes on the ice cream truck and has to be seen when they're driving around. And we're still
Okay.
waiting for that, so we won't grant this until we get that.
So should we just make it conditional on that?
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay,
Would you like to make a motion?
sure. I move that we grant the renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Stephen Wright, 116B Collins Street, Danvers, MA, conditional on approval of the Beverly Police Department.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Oh, yeah, second, sorry.
Beat you to it.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you for that
Same for the
condition.
next one, too.
Okay.
Same for the next one.
Order number 132, which is a renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Anwar Katabe. And Counselor Sweeney, would you like to have a go at this one as well?
I would, thank you, Madam Chair.
You?
I move that we approve the renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Anwar Katabe, 4 Woodland Court, Lawrence, MA, conditional on approval of the Beverly Police Department.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you for that, Counselor Sweeney. Okay, and then we have, excuse me, order number 133, which is the renewal applications for petroleum storage registrations for 2023. And this is a whole, actually, I have a question about this, but let me go to counselors first. Any questions from committee members?
Just, this is another list of petroleum licenses from what we did
That came in
last time.
after
Okay,
the last
so-
meeting.
So.
So it's the same
this-
situation.
Conditions on that and everything.
Okay. Counselor Sweeney, any questions?
No questions?
These are just they've got their
The yearly
registrations
renewals, they just came
in
in
later.
Yep.
Okay, great.
We
Okay,
don't give them out without the fire department signing off.
okay. And those, do you have a sense of when have those already been inspected, or?
Some have not.
Okay. All right, and you receive, I know we just went over this, but you receive that sign off by the fire department, and then that's when the,
Correct. The
Renewal
clerk of
becomes
committees
official.
receives it and then prints it out, and we put it with the order.
Okay.
The approval.
okay.
So can I motion to make it with the condition that fire department inspection reports provided to city clerk? There's a condition.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Okay. Let's see, so we're gonna go back up to order number 125. Counselor Houseman had a question on this, so I think we'll take it up, and he'll just have to ask his question in the full council, so you guys are my witness. What's that? Oh, call to order committee of the whole. Do we have?
Not if they're not in.
Oh, yeah, okay. You were hiding. Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Teno. Okay, so order number 125 is a proposed order approving the transfer of the care, custody, management, and control of 9 city-owned parcels of land in the area of Pole Swamp Lane to the Conservation Commission.
Good evening, Jesse Dole, Assistant City Solicitor. This is actually the administration tying up an unfulfilled obligation dating back to 2006. Back at that time, the remediation of what was the Vitale site had been completed, and the administration approach and the parcel itself had been transferred to the management and control of the Concom back in 1988. So in 2006, the city approached the Concom with the request that it approve the use of that parcel for active recreation in order to install the current soccer field, which now, as everyone knows, is Birch Plains Park. So in 2006, Concom approved of the use of the site for active recreation and ball fields on the condition that the city transfer an equivalent acreage of city-owned parcels to their management and control. Birch Plains Park is about 18 acres. Over the next 6-7 years or so, there was work done between the Concom and former DPS Commissioner Dick McNeil to attempt to identify some parcels that would be appropriate for the transfer to the control of the Concom. It was narrowed down 7 parcels in the area of what's known as Pole Swamp Lane of approximately just under 18 acres, so an equivalent number of acres as Birch Plains Park. For some reason, that just was never accomplished. The transfer of those city-owned parcels to the management and control of the Concom just was not done. And when that was discovered recently, I reopened Dick McNeil's files. I was unable to confirm city ownership of one of those 7 parcels. So as an alternative, I suggested 3 substitute parcels to bring up to about 26.6 acres of city-owned land that I felt was appropriate for transfer to the control of the Concom. I did go to the Concom last week, advised them of the failure to make that transfer back in 2006, and they approved of 9 total parcels in the area of Pole Swamp Lane that the Concom felt were appropriate for their care, custody, management, and control. So there's about 62 acres up in that area right now that are under the control of the Concom. This would add another 26.6 acres. Concom does feel that these 9 parcels are appropriate to add to their acreage up there that is under their control and management. So.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Yep. Got it. We got 2 minutes. Counselor Sweeney? Okay, Counselor Houseman, I know you had a specific question about this, and just so you know, we have a minute and a half.
You have a minute. Can you explain to me, Concom has no staff other than perhaps indirectly through the conservation agent. What does it mean for the Concom to have care, custody, management, and control specifically?
So similar to, but not the equivalent of Article 97, when land is transferred to the care, custody, control, management of a Concom pursuant to Chapter 40, Section 8C, that significantly limits the ability to do much of anything with the property moving forward in the future. So whereas, and I'm mixing 2 different laws or different legal theories, the transfer of the care, custody, and control of the Concom specifically for the protection of, I'm going to hopefully repeat the actual language, the appropriate for conservation purposes, the promotion and development of natural resources, and the protection of watershed resources. So that does effectively limit really anything being done up there. So it would be able to protect these parcels in perpetuity.
And
Thank you. I'm going to stop you there because it's time. And if we need more discussion on this, committee members, would you like to hold this and vote it out later on? Are you comfortable moving forward with this?
I'm comfortable moving it now.
Okay. I would accept a motion to recommend the council approve that the request be granted.
Second.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0, and I think, Counselor Houseman, there'll be time for follow-up as a full council. Okay, and motion to adjourn committee of the whole?
So moved.
Those in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn legal affairs committee?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you. Everyone, I'll call the full council back to order, and we will come to order for our posted 7:30 public hearing. I know some members of the public have already signed up to speak in this public hearing. If you have not yet and you would like to, this is the sign-up sheet for the 7:30 public hearing. You can come up and sign up at any point, even once we begin, so please don't hesitate. And the 8 o'clock public hearing is here in front of Ms. Kent. And please come up at any time and sign up if you have not already. And then when we come to members of the public, we will take those signed up in the order that they're signed up. Ms. Kent, would you please read Order 120?
Order number 120 from the City of Beverly, order that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, May 1st, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, relative to the following proposed order. Order that the city appropriate the sum of $8 million to pay costs acquiring the property located at 218-226 Cabot Street, also known as 218-224 Cabot Street, and 8 Chapman Street, also known as 18 Federal Street, including site improvements and the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet said appropriation, $2 million shall be transferred from free cash, and the treasurer will, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $6 million under and pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7-1, on any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore. The mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out this project, including but not limited to applying for, accepting, and spending any and all grants that may be available to the city to defray costs of this project. The amount authorized to be borrowed by this order shall be reduced to the extent of any such grants received by the city on account of this project. And this was put in the newspaper on Friday, April 21st, 2023.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. So we will have time to take comments from members of the public shortly. I do want to mention, some of you, if you read some of my posting about this meeting online, you may know there's also an 8 o'clock public hearing. So what we expect is that if this hearing, if we haven't had a chance to hear from everyone, we'll recess this hearing. That doesn't mean it will be over. We'll take up the 8 o'clock hearing because it is a joint hearing with members of the planning board, and then resume this hearing after that. So if you're here to speak, please hang in with us. We will be coming back to this hearing if we do need to recess it. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you'd like to open things up in our conversation about Order 120.
Thank you, Madam President. It's good to see everybody on the council tonight. It's good to see the interest in the community being here. Good to see our planning board colleagues. And we've got our team from the solicitor's office, planning department, and finance here to help answer questions. I'm just going to try to give you a brief overview, and I'm sure I won't answer everything you might have in mind to ask, so that's fine. We'll get to that. When the folks from Leggett McCall, who were interested in developing the old dollar store parcel, first came to us it was late in the 2020 shutdown, June or July, and we walked around the parcel. You know, we've been looking for years as a community for the owners of the property to put make some investment in the property. It's it will be a great eventually. Revitalized commercial space. And so they came to us at that time looking for really a transit-oriented development, and we expressed, they were looking at it. We said, well, you got to be careful about design, you got to be careful about scale, but mostly we said, we can't lose the parking. Now, we've never owned it, we've always leased it, but the city has relied for probably 50 years on leasing those 108 parking spaces behind the dollar store and just across Chapman Street and that other little lot from the Dana family, who's owned the parcel for quite some time. To lose 108 parking spaces in the heart of our downtown would be really extremely challenging, detrimental, you can use any word, to both our downtown residents and our downtown businesses. So from the start, we cautioned them that we needed a way to save those spaces. And they were great to work with. They really, every step along the way, have been professional and honorable. We dug in and tried to figure out just how to do some type of a public-private partnership with them, but it kept coming back to the fact that They needed all the existing spaces because they were trying to build 113 apartments. And every way we looked at it, we were trying to recreate spaces, but never as many as are there now. And it was going to be a big check from the city to the developer for them to try to rebuild. They would either have to rebuild underground, which we all understand underground parking is more expensive than above, or they were going to need to look for zoning relief to build beyond 55 feet to accommodate our parking needs and their own desire to, to build housing. At a certain point, it just didn't make any sense. And so at that point, we said, let's go get an appraisal of the property and see what it's really worth. And when the appraisal came back at being, roughly about the same cost, maybe even a little less, as we would have needed to put into the hands of the developer in any kind of a public-private attempt to rebuild parking, but again, only for about 80 of the 108 spaces. And we looked and realized that with an appraisal coming back at 7.1 million, that we could own the parcel outright. We could permanently protect the parking as city-owned parking, and we could, look to the parcel for other city needs. Now, during that same time, we were starting to realize that we've all been concerned with for some time the way that our older rental housing market in the downtown keeps going up and up. The term gentrification has been used, the rising of rents all over town. And this is a dynamic that's a function of many things, including our proximity to Boston and some of the closer in suburbs, having gotten this build out earlier on, and the zoning that we've had in place for 60, 70 years, the community's commitment over 2 master plans in 25 plus years or so to transit-oriented development as a way to help to meet our very real and continuing housing needs, while putting the housing closest to services. So all that is in play in making it challenging for people to continue to find housing that they can afford and make their homes in Beverly. So as we look at that, we can't solve that with any one building or one parcel, but we can do our part, just as we collectively did our part with Briscoe, and now we're seeing, long needed and going to be very high quality, deeply affordable senior housing at Briscoe. We can look in the same way at the parcel of the dollar store. So, one, we've got a proposal to take the property so that we can protect parking. 2, we now recognize that there's an opportunity for us as a community to craft an RFP to put what you might call a right-sized housing development there eventually that will provide housing that's affordable to people who live and work in Beverly and don't want to leave. Most of that housing would be in the under 60% of area median income level. A smaller number of units for lower income than that. But the goal being that we take this parcel, we protect the parking, we may eventually, and we likely eventually, would RFP development rights over the parking behind the existing building, right? And so the parking's there, and what the Leggett folks had proposed is what we're looking at in an affordable development on a much lower density, 50 units, about 50 units as opposed to 113. And so that's something that we can, work through over the next period of time if in fact you folks approve this and we go ahead with what's termed a friendly eminent domain taking. So there's that piece to it. We also, it's become clearer that when this building is renovated, we need to move out. And the project to renovate City Hall and rebuild the old police station next door to provide enough space for all of our city offices, which, as you know, our Inspectional Services Department is off campus, our Health Department is off campus, and the space in here for the departments and staff who are in here is undersized and insufficient. So this renovation project will move us all out in about a year's time and for up to 2 years. So now we look across the street at the roughly 18,000 square feet of commercial space that make up that building, that the dollar store, the rent-a-center, the former Bonefish, now they've moved next door, but the former space they were in. When you take that together, it'll just about meet our needs for our City Hall operations for the next couple of years. I want to be most transparent. We're not looking at that space for your own needs. The city council meeting space probably won't be something that can be met in the dollar store space. So when we move out of here, council meetings, other meetings that need to happen in a larger space, I think we'll need to look to the middle school, the high school, the library, whatever the expected size of meeting. I think for city council meetings, it's really yours to decide, but we've got some outstanding spaces that are suitable for BevCam's operation and as well. But other than the larger meetings, all of what we do in this building, we can meet across the street. As I said, about a year from now, we need to move out for up to 2 years. After that time, when this renovation is complete and everybody's moved back in here, then that existing building at the front of the building with the 2 stories and the commercial space, then we would no longer need that. Then we would look to RFP and sell that. The first floor space in that building, it's part of the core pedestrian area. We all know that term in our downtown. It used to be that all of our downtown properties, you had to have 25% of the space had to be commercial retail. We together several years ago revisited our downtown requirements for first floor space. If you remember, we've got 2 main streets about a mile long each, Cabot, Rantoul. We can't insist on commercial space every foot of that way. It would outstrip the demand. But in the core part of the downtown, and the planning director was reminding me, when we rewrote this a few years ago, we require 80% of the lot frontage to be building and 75% of that building frontage to be commercial retail. Up to 25% can be, it can be seen by up to 25% could be, for example, a lobby for housing that goes in behind or upstairs. But still, a large percentage of that building still needs to be commercial retail, and we all want that for the heart of our downtown. So those are just a few of the thoughts to share with you. I'll stop, and I know other people want to share their thoughts, and I'm sure you have some questions. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ailes, I wasn't sure if you wanted to comment at all at this point in the public hearing or just be available for questions as they arise.
However you prefer, it's fine.
Would you like to, any kind of overview you'd like to give? We'd welcome it, and then appreciate your availability for questions also.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. Just to add to what the mayor was saying and kind of key in on some of the finance aspects of this loan order. It is an $8,000 request, $2 million of which would come from the city's free cash balance. I'm sorry, $8 million, right. $6 million is the loan order. Thank you for that. So a total of $8 million, $6 million in loan order, $2 million in free cash. We were also going to feel the need to commit to a longer-term strategy to pay down the outstanding loan balance to a point where once we leave that building to reoccupy City Hall, that we would be fairly paid off in terms of the total value of the $8 million authorization. There's a lot of pieces to this. I have modeled with your budget analyst, Mr. Perry, some of the pay down models to try to get a sense that we can meet that obligation to try to pay down as much as we can by the time we move back to City Hall. It will require some commitments of future years' free cash values, future year budget capacity, as noted in Mr. Perry's memo. But overall, in short, the request for authorization is for the $6 million loan authorization as well as a $2 million free cash transfer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ailes. I know this is slightly different than sometimes the order that we proceed in with public hearings, but because we do have an 8 o'clock hearing that will intercede, and because we have members of the public signed up, I'd like to go to as many members of the public as we can, and that way, of course, you're welcome to stay and hear all of our conversation on this hearing, but if there are folks who are here and don't have as much time, I'd like to try to get to members of the public and also to my colleagues on the council that may also inform questions that you wish to ask based on what you hear from members of the public. I'm going to go to the list of people signed up. I will then put it back here, so if you didn't sign up yet, you can come add your name. I do want to mention that also in the interest of making sure that everyone has a fair and equitable amount of time, Councilor Rotundo, Vice President Rotundo will be keeping time, and each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. When you hear his timer on his phone go off, we never know what sound it will be, but when you hear it go off, if you could draw your comments to a close, just wrap up there so that everybody gets a chance to be heard, but also so that it's very equitable for everyone. So with that, I'll go to the first person signed up on the list, which is Mr. Rich Vincent. And when it is your turn to speak, if you would go to the podium and then start by stating your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam President and City Council. So my name's Rich Vincent. My wife and I, we live at 1 Mulberry Street in downtown, which is right between Cabot and Rantoul. We've lived there for about 18 years, and we've watched the downtown, the Cabot, grow and come to life during that time. I mean, we remember back when there was a lot of dark windows on Cabot Street. And now the windows aren't dark. They're alive. The sidewalks are alive. There's dining outside. There's laughter. We have our downtown gatherings. It's just I can't explain it, but you know, it touches your heart to see this. Now, the development, now I'm a commercial broker by trade. I love business, I love commercial real estate, I love development. This developer has every right to do what he's doing. By right, he can repurpose the office space into residential units. By right, he can repurpose the parking lot into additional residential space. That would bring employees to our downtown businesses, that would bring consumers to our downtown businesses, which we very much need, as well as add housing, which we all know that we need. The state has been screaming for housing. So by right, he can do this, but by wrong, it would affect our downtown. By losing those 100-plus parking spaces would be very detrimental to the businesses that are now thriving. We have 2 very powerful end caps in our downtown area. We have the Cabot and we have the Larkham. On Friday nights, our downtown is filled because of those 2 locations, those 2 businesses. The Larkham came back to life, if you recall, and that was done by a husband and wife that invested their life and their heart and their blood into that building to bring it back to life. The Cabot, God bless it, was struggling at a point, and a group of financiers came together and put their money, their heart, and their soul into the Cabot and brought that back to life. If you take away the parking, you take away that life. You will darken the windows once again. You will darken the spirits once again. I ask that you really think about this. The 100 spaces, let me back up. The Cabot and Larkham and A&B Burger, their receipts show that the majority of their business comes from outside of Beverly. And that means that people are driving here to take advantage of the entertainment that Beverly has. If you take out those parking spaces, you take out those customers and you darken the windows. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vincent. I appreciate the enthusiasm, Mr. Younger. Our next speaker who signed up is Leslie Gould. Thank you, Ms. Gould. If you would begin with your name and address for the record, and then you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Gould. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce, and I live at 372 Essex Ave in Gloucester. and I do love my job, oh, by the way. I'm here tonight with Medley Long, who is the chairman of the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, as well as Richard Vincent, who just spoke. He is the vice chair of the chamber, as well as the head of our government affairs. Full disclosure, several weeks ago, the mayor came to invite myself and Lindsay Barth, who is the executive director of Main Streets, to meet with him about this very project. And the proposal that's before you this evening. We have to take that back, of course, to our board of directors, who vetted the information that was given to us and that was read this evening. And the board voted in favor of supporting the mayor in his efforts and the proposal that is before you tonight for several reasons. One major issue, parking. Again, Rich so eloquently just spoke about parking. Parking is not just about businesses, it's about the residents. When the snow falls, and even though we're in a climate change situation, the snow will fall. There needs to be places to go. There needs to be alternative areas for people to park. You cannot talk about expanding any kind of retail or service-oriented business on Cabot Street without talking about maintaining or adding to parking. We already know, based on many conversations that we have had with the Cabot and the Larkham, that there is not enough parking. And you know that every community across the country deals with this very issue, whether you're in Newburyport, which seems to have a ton of parking, or even when you're in Marblehead that wants to be like Newburyport but doesn't have parking. So parking is at a premium. We really need to preserve it. Housing, of course, is very important, and those are all building blocks of the Chamber of Commerce. We believe in economic vitality, economic development. That is housing, that is your workforce, that's parking that keeps people here and in the community, have people come to the community to spend their dollars, and then there's the transportation aspect. If you don't have it, chances are they won't come. And quite frankly, we know that Cabot Street has bloomed is like an understatement over the past 10 to 15 years, but there's so much more opportunity there. So we need to maintain that parking. The Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce is enthusiastically in support of the mayor's proposal before you this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gould. The next speaker signed up is Lindsay Barth, please. And same as everyone before you, if you'd begin with your name and address for the record, and then you have up to 3 minutes.
Yes. Hello, my name is Lindsay Barth. I'm the Executive Director of Beverly Main Streets. I live at 675C Hale Street, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. As you know, Beverly Main Streets brings you the beloved community events, Arts Fest, block parties, downtown trick or treat, our holiday stroll, but also on top of that, we focus on providing resources to our small businesses and supporting our downtown economy. We recognize that some of the biggest issues we're facing in our downtown is limited parking and the need for more affordable housing. With that in mind, we are supportive of this proposal to buy the Family Dollar block. This proposal reflects a thoughtful approach to preserving an important piece of our downtown. The original proposals for the build-out of the Family Dollar block were much less friendly to the downtown, both in parking and affordability. The permanent preservation of 108 parking spaces is a solid step in the right direction, and we're encouraged to hear of the mayor's intent to bring affordable housing to the space upon its development. I would ask that we continue to keep the preservation of the structure and the facade of the building in mind as any plans move forward. Given the timeline of the City Hall renovations, I see this as an opportunity to take time in fostering a relationship with the right developer for this affordable housing build-out, ensuring that their plans meet our community's needs. This timeline also gives us the opportunity to strategically source businesses that are the right fit for this retail space. It would be our intention to remain part of this conversation in hopes that this proposal gives us the opportunity to fill some of the gaps in our downtown economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barth. Our next speaker signed up is George Gomes. Thank you, Mr. Gomes. If you would begin, name and address for the record, and then up to 3 minutes.
George Gomes, 63 Bridge Street, Apartment 2. I'm asking you to oppose this proposal, which I believe is a bad use of public funds and fails basic cost-benefit math. I have 3 main concerns.
First is fiscal responsibility. I do think $8 million is a lot of money. It's unclear to me that the city has fully vetted any alternatives when it comes to where city hall offices are going to go, for instance. 20,000 square feet in a commercial building in Beverly can be rented for much less than $8 million. My quick calculations had it around 1 to 1.3 million total for 3 years, which is longer than the planned renovations. Has the city looked into a commercial lease or into phasing the renovations so that the former police station annex or other city property might be used as a swing space? If we assume that the City Hall office space could be accommodated commercially for around $1.5 million over those 2 to 3 years, then what you're really being asked for is to spend $6.5 million on 108 parking spaces or $58,000 per spot. That's pricey parking. Second, I have environmental concerns. Simply put, it's not green, sustainable, or climate leadership to be spending millions of dollars to build or buy parking lots. Transportation emissions account for 48% of Beverly's carbon emissions, and even rapid EV adoption doesn't erase the carbon footprint or public health impacts of driving. The city theoretically prioritizes sustainability and providing transportation alternatives like public transit, biking, or walking. Those are the right goals, and downtown is an exemplar for this. This neighborhood has the highest percentage of car-free or car-light households in the city, but budgets reflect values. $58,000 a spot to subsidize private car storage in the heart of downtown shows our real priorities, in my opinion. There are other strategies that would change incentive structures and encourage alternative transportation. We just need to invest in them. Finally, housing is probably the most important issue facing our city and region. We have 113 apartments permitted on this spot, 12 of them affordable. The administration faced criticism when the building was proposed, and now doesn't want that building so badly it proposes throwing $8 million at the problem. In its place, in a few years, the city promises a different private developer will buy the Family Dollar building, build up to 50 units of affordable housing, and incredibly, we won't lose a single parking spot because the developer will also build an elevated structure. Does anybody seriously think this will happen? We know the city tried to negotiate with Leggett McCall, we heard that from the mayor, to preserve the parking spots. The developer told the city that to provide more parking on the site was not economically feasible. A recent estimate on parking costs indicated that each spot in a parking structure costs over $31,000. How is an affordable housing developer going to build 50 additional spots on the site in addition to the affordable housing we've been promised? I understand that some among you worried that the Leggett McCall project set a dangerous precedent for development in our downtown. You changed the zoning because of those concerns. I believe that the true dangerous precedent would be set by this purchase. What does it say that our city, which prioritizes environmental sustainability and housing production, would prioritize 108 homes for cars over 112 homes for people? This plan wastes public funds, it undermines stated policy goals, and it defies common sense. I urge you to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes. I know we're coming really close to our next hearing, but I think we have one more signed up public speaker. Doesn't mean this can be the last one, but Mr. Moffett, I'd love to try to get you up there before we take a recess on this and resume. So name and address for the record and up to 3 minutes, please.
Hi, yeah, Steve Moffett, 32 Eastern Ave. I guess a lot of the same questions, so I can go pretty quick through that. So yeah, I just want to focus on the use of the funds. When you're considering the proposal, to take the time to consider what the traffic studies actually say about the parking. The lot that we're talking about is currently empty. I agree Friday nights are busy, but I think if we all take the time to actually walk down Rantoul during those nights, you might find more spaces available down there if you're willing to walk. So could you take that money and build better bike infrastructure or better busing to also alleviate parking? If we're focused on affordable housing, I'd also ask you to investigate and pursue avenues where, when this is done, instead of selling back to a developer, can we actually turn this into real public housing? Can we make this in a way that is long-term going to be assured low-income housing and not just that way for 10 years and then back to market rate? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moffett. That does bring us to 8 o'clock. Members of the council, I'm going to ask for a motion to recess this hearing so that we can take up our 8 o'clock hearing. Members of the public, that doesn't mean this hearing is done. We will continue this hearing this evening, and I'm going to ask for what is likely a closer recess than we may need, but what I don't want is to end up pushing it too far out and having members of the public waiting around. So I would entertain a motion to recess the public hearing on order 120 to 8:20.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 8-0, and we will resume the public hearing on order 120 at 8:20 p.m. With that, that brings us to 8 o'clock, so we will open the posted public hearing on order number, actually, We will not. I would entertain a motion to take a 2-minute recess to get the planning board up here.
Okay, are they gonna read this?
All right.
All those in favor? Thank you. Take a 2-minute recess to get reset.
Sorry. Do you have Emily's paper in your desk?
Thank you, everyone. With that, we're going to open, this is a joint public hearing of the Beverly City Council and the Beverly Planning Board. I will read the legal notice posted on behalf of the City Council, and then I'll invite my chair, my colleague, Planning Board Chair Ellen Hutchinson, to open the Planning Board's portion of the hearing as well. So this is the legal notice for Order 75. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Beverly as follows. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5, that the Beverly City Council and Beverly Planning Board will hold a joint public hearing on Monday, May 1st at 8 p.m. in the City Council Chambers, City Hall, 3rd floor, 191 Cabot Street, Beverly, Mass., relative to a proposed zoning ordinance amendment regarding a rezoning of 8 Summit Ave, Assessors Map 1, Lot 69, from the RMD Multifamily District to the CC District. Maps of the relevant parcel are on file in the Planning Department and in the Clerk's office and are available for public review. Amended ordinance shall take effect upon publication and final passage, and this was published in the Salem News on Monday, April 17th and Monday, April 24th.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the May 1st, 2023 meeting of the Beverly Planning Board is hereby called to order. Colleagues, I'd welcome a motion to recess for public hearings, please. A motion, seconded by Derek Beckwith. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We are now in public hearing.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
I would like to just remind members of the public, there is also a sign up for this public hearing. If you are interested in signing up to speak, it's here in front of me. You can come up at any time and add your name. And when we come to members of the public, just as we just did in the previous hearing, we'll take them in the order that we have them. Let's begin. Mr. Alexander, I see that you're at the podium and ready to go, so I'd invite you to give us an overview of this proposal.
Thank you, Madam President and Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you at this public hearing regarding the rezoning of 8 Summit Ave from RMD to CC. For the record, it's Thomas Alexander with offices at 1 School Street in Beverly. So this piece of property is across the street from the Anchor Pub and Restaurant, which is owned by Robert Boudreau, who's right in front of me here. The Boudreau family has owned this property for 26 years, since 1996. 27 years, actually, now that I do my math. It's a very successful restaurant. As I think you know, it's the only restaurant in Beverly that is open 365 days a year, and it serves 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so it does service a lot of Beverly. And I think probably you're aware that over time, that area of Beverly has become very congested with parking. Most recently, due to the opening of the Mission Boathouse, which has 350 seats. The capacity of the Anchor is 140 seats. Of course, the Anchor is a pre-existing non-conforming use, so it's not required to comply with current parking. However, from a business perspective, it makes sense to try to provide that opportunity for the patrons. So Mr. Boudreau purchased this property. It's not a huge piece of property. It's 6,500 square feet, which is, I don't know, something like 1/6 of an acre. And it will allow something in the range of 12 to 18 parking spaces, but that's pretty significant in this particular area. The neighbors, Mr. Boudreau has been in touch with the neighbors. We've also spoken to our Ward 2 City Councilor and also the mayor about this. And I would just like to present to you a neighbor's petition of those who have signed. There were 30 people actually in the neighborhood who've signed on behalf of this. Is a map here that shows in green. I don't remember this from the GDA days.
Yes, I do.
The green is the subject property, and yellowish is the people who signed the behalf.
Thank you.
So it gives you a kind of a visual of
Thank you.
neighborhood support.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So that is really, really pretty much it. It's an area that is in need of parking. Actually, the city had to go through and reconfigure the on-street parking because it was not working down there, and a number of spaces were lost. So this is an important matter, and I would hope that you would vote favorably for this. I know that the planning board is recessing after this, and it would be most helpful if they could, if they're so inclined, to vote to recommend, because the summer season is coming quickly and the parking is really needed down there. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. Our city planning director, Darlene Nguyen, is here. Ms. Nguyen, I don't know if you had any comments or overview that you wanted to offer, or just be available for questions. Okay, thank you. Councilor Feldman?
Yes, President Flowers, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Feldman. We'll send someone to get you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilor Houseman, did I see your hand?
No, that was just a...
Assist to Councilor Feldman. Much appreciated, Councilor. Councilor Rand, this is in your ward. Any comments or questions that you'd like to also offer? I know you've been part of this conversation, it sounds like, at this point already.
Yes, thank you. And so it's okay, we can open up to questions now too, right?
Yes, and actually, what I should have mentioned, I discussed with Chair Hutchinson, is that what I'd like to do is similar to, councilors, what we did with the school committee in our joint meeting, take a council question and then offer the planning board an opportunity for a question and alternate in that way. So Councilor Rand, if you want to kick us off, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Hutchinson to see if the planning board has one, and we'll go back and forth.
Thank you so much. I wanted to comment that I've been working with Sergeant Henneberry and Chief Lasher and the mayor on sort of organizing the street parking and the city parking down there in a way that's safe and effective. And because the Anchor is such a popular spot, it brings in a lot of cars, a lot of people. It, a couple years ago, was one of my #1 phone calls that I was receiving on a regular basis. So I actually think this is a great, in my opinion as a Ward 2 councilor, this is a great benefit to the neighborhood in terms of organizing parking and making it a safer space for both pedestrians and cars. I did have one question that's come up. I just wanted to confirm how this is not considered spot zoning, and this is maybe a question for our either legal or planning department, but is this not spot zoning because it's proposed by the owner of the property?
You know, could I take that, and if I might, and certainly then defer to the planning staff, but.
Mr. Alexander.
Yeah, so I've researched this because I anticipated that, and it's very rare under the, I just took a look at Bobrowski's Massachusetts Land Use and Planning Law, which is kind of the Bible for the zoning matters in Massachusetts. And so this is a situation where you have, this lot abuts the CC zone already, so it already shares a parcel with it. And according to Bobrowski, lots proposed for rezoning, which are located on the border of the district, are most difficult to successfully challenge. In the 8 challenges involving border lots, 7 resulted in decisions favoring the municipality. So it's highly unlikely that, should this be opposed, that a court of law would find, under these circumstances, that this is spot zoning, because it is right up against, it's not like we've taken a spot out in the middle of nowhere and rezoned it, especially, it's contiguous to a zone that is right next to it.
Thank you.
Ms. Vin, did you concur? Okay.
On behalf of the planning department, we concur with that interpretation. It's very similar to the argument that we used when we did the cell signaling rezoning, as well as to why that was would not constitute spot zoning, or not unlikely to. So,
thank you, Ms. Wynn.
Thank you, and I have one more just sort of follow-up comment. Actually, I just wanted to also thank Mr. Boudreau for being open to thinking about the lot in terms of permeability and how that affects, the actual construction of the lot, how that could affect runoff. And I know he reached out to me and to discuss that, so I'm hoping to continue that conversation.
And if I may, one thing that I forgot to mention is that by rezoning this, we're not done. There's another step involved. You can only have the principal use of a lot in a CC zone by way of a special permit that is granted by the planning board. So should this go through, we will be back before the planning board in much greater detail with engineered plans, including the drainage situation.
Great, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. If I may, Ms. Hutchinson, I realized I'd like to do similar to what we did with the first public hearing. We do have one member of the public who's already signed up, and so I'd like to give him the opportunity to speak if he would like, and then that may inform questions that we have. Mr. Finn, thank you. If you would begin with your name and address for the record, and similar to our last public hearing, I'll ask Vice President Rotundo to please keep time. And when you hear the timer, if you would draw to a close, but up to 3 minutes, please.
I won't go that long, I promise.
All right.
Dan Finn, resident of Beverly. We're in the property business, real estate business, and we are really heavily invested in the basin. We like to refer to both sides of that that the Mission Boathouse, the Front Street side, and the Goat Hill side, because what happens on one side can very much affect what happens on the other. As a neighbor on both sides, we should want to commend the Boudreau family for stepping up. It would be just as easy to sit in your restaurant like others do and not try to fix a problem that everyone knows exists. So thank you very much, Mr. Boudreau and your family, because if it wasn't for him and this kind of activity, our summer would be way worse than it's already going to be. As you know, with the boating season starting, we can just think the traffic already floods up Front Street, all the way up Water Street, onto Goat Hill, and the Mission Boathouse, not to take up anybody's time, but they have 100 seats ready to go out on the balcony, which were not part of the permit process, with 25 tabletop tables, and I'm sure it is going to be very, very, very popular, and it's not going to be great for the residents because there'd just be no place to park. So thank you, Mr. Boudreau. This is a terrific idea. I 100% endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. As I mentioned before, members of the public, you're not limited to, if you've signed up now, you can come up at any point. I will pause us at 8:20 just to recess our hearing, our previous hearing, but Ms. Hutchinson, I'd like to give you a chance to ask your planning board if they have a question.
Members of the planning board have a question for Attorney Alexander or his team? George? Please.
The question was actually for the planning department. On our staff report, it says that the planning department finds the zoning change is consistent with the city's goals for this area. Can you describe what those goals are generally?
Thank you.
I think the intent was just to imply that the city has been working hard on identifying parking solutions for that area and solving the problem. That we, as Councilor Rand has noted, we frequently also get calls about parking in that area and have been working with the boating community, the fishing community, the harbor management authority, and businesses that are down there to try and find a solution for parking that makes it more feasible.
Councilor Rotundo?
Just a comment. I can speak, working with Councilor Wren on the harbor management aspect. When this was brought up 2.5 years ago, the Mission Boathouse was being built. One thing that was on everyone's mind was the parking, being proactive. The chairman, Mr. Earl, had tasked the committee to do it. We looked at it. Mr. Boudreau, credit to you to looking for additional parking, as well as the Rowan parking, and as well as the city taking proactive measures along the off streets up Summit to really at least find some additional parking, even if it's 12 or 18 spaces and 12 or 18 at the Rowan spot. It really is going to make a better difference. I know it's not going to maybe satisfy Mr. Finn, but it will definitely be better than what was originally there. I think it's definitely worthwhile to, I can't see why there would be no reason to not do it, basically. It just seems a no-brainer here that this has been an issue since the Mission Boathouse started construction, and we were hearing from the recreational boaters, the commercial fishermen, and as well as the residents as they were down in the area trying to make way to the waterfront. So fully support it. I just can't see why it would be a no-brainer not to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. And before we go back to the planning board, members of the council, I will reopen the public hearing on Order 120, and I would ask for a motion to recess that public hearing to 8:35.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll resume the public hearing on Order 120 at 8:35. And Madam Chair, we'll go back to you.
Madam President. Additional questions from members of the planning board? Wayne Miller, please.
No roving microphone today.
No, I guess not. Just a comment that I'll be interested to hear about permeable parking solutions, if you've explored that. And I just want to say, as I often do, that a decision to go to the Anchor is never a bad idea.
So unfortunately, the engineer that we have working on this project, George Zamboris, could not, he was supposed to be here, couldn't make it this evening. His wife fell off a ladder and broke her leg, so she's in the hospital and he's with her. But I have discussed it with George, and we knew Councilor Rand's concerns, and that the plan is to make the parking lot permeable, probably crushed stone, Bob, is that what we're talking about? Yeah. So we're looking to do it that way as opposed to not doing pavement, which will cause runoff. This would allow for seepage into the soils. And also, you will, if this goes through, the board will be seeing that when we go for the special permit. We'll have that fully engineered, including calculations, drainage calculations.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. So I am pleased to see the neighborhood support and can tell where that's coming from with the pressure on parking currently. So it does seem to fill an immediate need and a need anticipated over the next couple of years. But I'm just curious with, zoning, we're often thinking further out into the future. If we are successful in making some of the investments in public transportation, walkability, bikeability, and start to see reductions in the need for parking in the next 5 to 10 years, which I think we're all hoping for in many ways, that lot would then be, in the CC zone, available for high density housing, for activated uses. So I'm just curious sort of what thinking has gone into the long-term plan there in addition to the immediate need.
Well, certainly as a business owner, you have to be cognizant of what your requirements are. Certainly if the demand for parking went down, that could be used for affordable housing. I would point out to you that the density allowed in a CC district is greater than that in an RMD district. So actually, if that were to come to pass, more units would be potentially available on that lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Questions from members of the planning board? I'll ask a question. Mr. Alexander, I know you presented us with the petition from the neighborhood. Did you or the applicant have discussions with the direct abutters? And I'm just wondering if they had any concerns.
Yes, Mr. Boudreau, I believe, met with a couple of the direct abutters, and they indicated that they were not inclined to sign a petition, but did not indicate that they were opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question or comments from the council? Okay.
Any other final questions from members of the board?
No? Okay. For our part, the City Council, we will refer Order 75 back to the Subcommittee on Legal Affairs. As I read originally, but for members of the public following along, on the City Council's side of things, this is a proposed zoning ordinance change, which means that it cannot take effect tonight. Ordinance changes take multiple readings before final passage, but we will refer to legal affairs until ready for further action.
Thank you. Planning board will continue our public hearing in the conference room immediately as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will, on the City Council side, close the public hearing on Order 75 and officially refer it back to legal affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Thank you for your time and your input.
Thank you very much. City Council members, I would entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The City Council is in recess for 5 minutes, please. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again to members of the Beverly Planning Board for being here for our joint hearing, joining us for that. I will call the full council back to order now. We are resuming our public hearing on Order 120, and where we had left off, I think we were coming actually to a point to take some questions from the council, questions or comments from the council. I would like to mention, members of the public, if you had not yet had a chance to sign up to speak, the sign-up sheet is here in front of me, and I will go to one additional time and we'll take some comments from the public if someone has a comment that they would like to add. So members of the council, Councilor Rotundo, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a few questions, if you don't mind. Mayor, I guess I would have to start with you on the question. It's the project itself, knowing that the developer was taking the project, was this ever considered before they got into that process? Or was it more that became a necessity knowing that they came into it? We've known that's always been leased, and then we stepped in as they were further along in their project. Was there a reason why we didn't consider it earlier? Is one question. And then the other one, which kind of piggybacks sort of towards it, because it butts it, is, did we ever consider the St. Mary's piece of parcel? Because that's an empty property. I know it's being used right now temporarily, but is that something that was ever considered as well?
Thanks, Councilor. So to the first question, we spent the better part of 2 years trying to figure out how to partner with them. And every way we looked at it, and we worked with some state officials, we worked with Mass Development, which is a quasi-state agency. We tried to figure out how to make it work, but it kept coming back to well over $7 million to try to buy into their project and recreate spaces that they'd be taking away to cover the zoning requirements for parking for the housing they wanted to build. So it was just, there was a point, I'd say it was sometime last summer, where we finally, looked at each other, and this was our whole team, here at the city, the administrative team, and said, we can't make it work. It's a square peg in a round hole, right? We can't make a public-private partnership work. It doesn't really meet the public need. And that's when we decided to go for the appraisal, which we shared that we were going to get an appraisal with the team from Leggett and the Dana family. And so, kind of stayed in conversation throughout that time. And they were moving forward with their process with the planning board because that's what they were, that's the path they were on. Which is part of why at the end of the process, we ended up with an appraisal for 7.1 and ended up with an agreement with them for 7.35. They were able to articulate a number of expenses and sunk costs and, put into the whole process. And so that's how that all came to. And, the value of an agreement with Leggett McCall, the Dana family, and the city is that if you folks vote to approve this, it's all signed, and this will be what we call a friendly eminent domain taking, and all will be free and clear with title, and there'll be nothing, no concern that they may, decide they want to go to court and look for any kind of damages. So there was certainty there, which is of real value. You ask if we looked at other alternatives. Yes, we did. We looked at a number of parcels in the downtown to look and see whether they could provide us meet the same needs, the parking, the need for municipal space, for our own business for a couple of years, an opportunity to help do our part to try to ensure more housing can be affordable for people in that they can stay in Beverly or come to Beverly. So we look at all the things that we are looking to try to accomplish here now, all these public purposes, and we did evaluate several other parcels in the downtown, including the church parcels, and nothing else could meet the combination of needs together. When we looked at, trying to use the same formula of appraisal, we saw a couple combinations that might have come in at a lower price tag, But they couldn't provide the amount of parking. They couldn't provide anywhere near the amount of housing opportunity. And, you know, these were property owners who we've had no time spent with and no history with in this conversation. So we had no idea whether, you know, whether we would meet with any willingness or interest in finding finding a common ground with anybody. So that would have put a big variable back in play when this was all ready to go.
One more question.
Please.
Just in regards to the relocation of City Hall for 2.5 years, rental-wise, and I know this was mentioned by one of the citizens, was how much would it cost the city to rent space in the open market, in essence, per year? What would it cost the city?
So I'll try the numbers. We're looking at potentially 2 years of being out of this building, roughly 18,000 square feet at $27 a square foot. So this was the calculation that the finance department put together when looking at the going rate. So with that in mind, it was about $500,000 per year. Now we know there'll be build-out costs if we go in across the street. So it wouldn't be a full $1 million savings. It'd be some lower amount netted out.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Rand, please.
Thank you. I guess comment is just that I think this is an important investment in downtown. And I think it can be an inspired and great investment in downtown. I know some of what I've heard from you, Mr. Mayor, that you're really thinking creatively about how to add affordable housing and preserve the 108 spaces we have. And I definitely encourage some thought about, while I support this project, I found Mr. Gomes's comments interesting, thinking about bike infrastructure and, not just housing cars, but kind of creating a space that supports pedestrian travel and blends with the neighborhood in terms of a parking lot. And then what I really don't want to lose sight of, I have maybe 2 or 3 questions, but I want to just bring right out to the top, is that when this project first came forward, one of the main concerns was actually losing the artist studios. So I'm hoping you can help me understand, are you, during the City Hall renovations, are those artist spaces disappearing? Have you kind of, through President Flowers to the mayor, have you thought about how to incorporate artist studio space, in a final RFP, or is that something that you're willing to help facilitate somewhere in the city?
So it's been shared with us by the team by the Dana family that all of the tenants on the second floor have moved out. So they're no longer there. We know that they had been working with the YMCA, and we followed up and spoke with Chris Lavasco, the CEO of the North Shore Y, and we've expressed a desire that they continue to try to travel that path and provide opportunities to any of the artists who formerly were in the building, if they've got a desire and an ability to stay in town and do that. Don't know where they're at with that process. As far as what we would collectively do with the building when we don't need it, when we're in there, we may need all that space on the first and second. When we're no longer there and we look to sell it, we've got, again, I don't want to get ahead of myself. If you folks vote to approve this, we'll have 3 years to figure that out together. And, if you remember the process we went through with Briscoe, when we looked at Briscoe, we looked at this building, the current police station, the thought of the new police station, and we came to some decision points. As part of that process, we ended up, putting some real, we had a lot of public process and input and came away with some real specific values. And one of them at that time was to preserve Briscoe. And I know we'll have a conversation about the existing commercial building and, what an RFP should look like, what it should require, what it should allow for. And so I don't want to predict that, except to say, you know, that's something that we together are going to work through. I mean, the council, the mayor, whoever are in these seats, and community stakeholders. And so, you know, if that rises to the top as a priority and it's deemed that it needs to be, you know, accounted for in the RFP, then, you know, then you'll see it there.
Thank you. And one more question. Let's see. So I guess my other question is just sort of a technical question on how I've heard it said that the parking will be protected kind of permanently as parking. And I'm just curious just what that process is to permanently protect parking, and if there are restrictions on future kind of profit on the property.
So I'll say a couple things, and then I may ask the solicitor to clean up what I don't answer right. So if we take it, we'll own the parcel. So we'll own the ground and we'll own the parking spaces. When we RFP out development rights above the parking, then the question is, what's the right way to preserve permanently the parking that we have taken ownership of? Think about a couple things that I think are variables that we'll figure out together as we go. One is the dollar store parcel is much deeper than retail space tends to be these days. And I know when Leggett was looking at it, they were looking at kind of cutting off the back of that building, which would create more parking, which would allow for, you know, more flexibility in how a redevelopment or development above for the affordable housing piece might look as well. You know, we would take 108 spaces. If somebody were to come in, and again, I shouldn't say if this happens, we anticipate, because we've spent time with some affordable housing developers, and we've looked at the viability of this as a, you know, those development rights. And it's very viable in a model of about 50 units with second story decked parking, and then third and fourth story housing. Financed in a similar model to the way Briscoe's financed. The biggest chunk of it are those federal 9% low-income housing tax credits. This is how we could require in an RFP and secure permanent affordability in those units. I know that was referenced as a concern. So I'm saying this because when you build decked parking, you do take away some parking underneath, right? And because you need support poles and you need ramping. So we could take that 108 spaces and by taking off the back of the dollar store, make it more. That could allow for some flexibility in decking. We could also require, this is just all brainstorming, we could also require that a future developer of the space behind the existing building, right? Not the existing building isn't part of this conversation. Space behind the existing building, if they needed to, we could require that spaces that would be taken up by the building of a structure could be recreated or replicated on a second level. There are different ways of looking at it. Or those are the things that we can figure out together in the next period of time if we get through this conversation and agree to move forward. Solicitor, do you want to add to that? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Solicitor.
So I think the mayor covered most of it, especially the affordable housing piece. There are a couple of different vehicles by which we could retain rights to the surface level parking, and that's something we can figure out. It would be part of the RFP. We could retain a permanent easement for the parking and sell the property, subject to whatever other criteria we put into the RFP, or we could consider RFPing just air development rights. So those are a few different ways that we could do it. But there are ways that we could retain the legal right to use the property as exclusively municipal parking.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Thank you, Councilor Rand. Thank you, Solicitor Williams. Councilor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'll just make a quick comment before getting into a few of my questions here. As a resident of Federal Street, I can say from my own personal experience that I use the lot in question frequently. At our apartment, the only other parking access we have is on street. So that's something that I appreciate the mayor's administration took into consideration, the use of that parking, not only by residents like myself and Mr. Vincent, but then also I can certainly attest that on Friday and Saturday nights, the lot's quite full with folks from out of town. So from that end, I appreciate the proposal and the questions that I have, and I'll start with a question for Mr. Ailes. I noticed the difference between the request of $8 million split between free cash and borrowing authorization and the amount negotiated between the city and Leggett of $7,350,000. There's that space of about $650,000. And in the materials we've received, it's my understanding that that amount would go towards the cost of renovating the Family Dollar parcel to make it suitable for city staff to inhabit whenever the move comes. Is it your expectation that that $650,000 or so would cover the entirety of those renovation costs, or would the administration need to come back to the council for additional funding to build out that space?
So it's a little too early to tell with certainty around the build out. I mean, we have walked the property. We do know generally what we think is needed over there. It would not be an elaborate build out. It would be, functional and some necessary upgrades, but any funds that the city does put into that build out, when it disposes of the building, it's effectively lost money. So that's why when the mayor was talking about, the savings of not having to lease space for 2 years to occupy City Hall, that there are some offsetting costs. If the costs to renovate that area came in under this, the money would be returned back to the general fund. If it comes in over, we would have some flexibility within the City Hall renovation project to absorb some of the costs within that project as well. But obviously, we'd be fully transparent as we receive bills, the estimates and the bids for various components of that build out.
Thank you. And one other question, which probably falls in the vein of being too early to tell. I know 3 years from now, the real estate market could look very different, as we've seen from 3 years ago to now. But have you guys run any preliminary calculations, even at ballpark estimate level, of what the city could expect to see back a few years from now when we do go to potentially issue an RFP, as the mayor described, and then maybe look to sell off the commercial storefront area?
Do you want to? We can tag team on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Councilor, as you heard me say in response to Councilor Rand, the conversation as to what we want out of that transaction, if we get to that, could lead us to selling that parcel with no strings. It could also lead us to selling that parcel with with certain mandates and, and certain goals in mind. So I don't think we can predict what a purchase price will be when we haven't yet traveled the path to determine what we want. We do know that we both want, and the zoning will require, significant, active first floor commercial retail out of whoever buys that. But we don't yet know what we're going to be, what are the allowances, what are the requirements going to be in our RFP? Are we going to together decide that that building, as it exists, needs to be preserved in any redevelopment? That'll be a big decision point for us together, right? But there'll be other things that I'm sure will come up. Councilor Rand suggested or asked, when we do that, are we going to look to try to ensure that certain uses are provided in the building as well? So, I think we can brainstorm, and then we'll probably need to be guided as well, as we look at what's possible for a purchase price. I hear the question, and we'd all love to know that we can get X amount of dollars back and we can plan for that, but that also depends on whether that is the top priority, whether it's a strong priority, among other things that we look to accomplish.
Okay, yeah, that's completely understandable, so I appreciate the response. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Before I go to Councillor Houseman, Mr. Perry, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to the conversation at this point, or would like to remain in reserve?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the council. Yeah, I forwarded to you
Friday morning, my memorandum and my recommendations here. I want to touch upon a few areas, mostly financial in nature, as well as, quite frankly, prospectively looking forward, some concerns and thoughts to make this happen. With regard to the free cash, as I wrote to you, we have a little over $7.5 million left this fiscal year. They want to take $2 million of that. I'm comfortable with that. I even wrote to you I could be comfortable with utilizing approximately $1 more million of that this fiscal year, but I would not spend or not recommend to you to spend any more than that. So it's important you know that. So I am comfortable with the $2 million they're asking. I spent and haunted our finance director quite a bit over this project and spent a considerable amount of time with him, carefully reviewing our capital expenditure plan. I had a conference call with our financial advisor to look at our debt capacity. One of the concerns I had was, and my comments here really are not just the Cabot Street, but also the renovation of this building and even the McPherson Youth Center that they're looking to renovate or rebuild, I guess. So they all go together. And I can report to you based on my research at this point, I'm comfortable that if we were to do all these things, it will not be detrimental, in my opinion, to our bond rating. That was very important to me. So I looked at that, and I believe that if we use the strategies I'm about to articulate to you, I believe that it will comfortably fit within our debt capacity. So again, it's some of this is art. It's not all science, but I am comfortable with regard to those areas. It is my recommendation to the council that you adopt the proposal of the mayor as requested. I think we can do this. One of the areas, as some of you veteran councils know, we used a lot of strategies to build the police station, and we really were successful. I was very happy how that played out, and a lot of the strategies being ssuggested at this point financially to do this is similar or parallel in nature to how we handled the financing of the police station. I will, though, I want to articulate, I wrote to you, but I want to say it publicly, if you'd be patient with me, Madam President. I want to say these 5 or 6 concepts I think are pretty important that the public as well as everyone be aware of as my opinions and how we move on this. But number one, strategically, the city should use the vast majority of future free cash over the next 2 to 4 years to pay down the loan orders for the Cabot Street, the McPherson Center, and if possible, some of the City Hall project, avoiding expensive borrowing costs. Number 2, it is my view that the administration and City Council needs to be more disciplined when both preparing and approving the FY24 and the FY25 budgets. The city needs to have a strong certified balance sheet with appropriate free cash over the next 2 to 4 years so as to have enough free cash to pay down a large segment of these loan orders to make sure it fits properly in our debt capacity. Number 3, Beverly will need over the next couple of years to raise their levy limit by 2.5% plus our traditional new growth over these next fiscal years, as well as, and this is important, minimize the expansion of both municipal and educational services during these periods. We have some challenges with our FY24 budget, specifically in the area of healthcare costs. That's something I'm working with and monitoring with our finance director, and we have to be really careful. If we are going to expand some of the services we have in prior years, it would be my view you could not do that and do this at the same time. So we have to be careful in those areas. The administration also needs, and we've discussed this earlier, to transfer appropriate unexpended FY23 funds, retained earnings, and or SESD undesignated fund balances for Beverly to eliminate the culvert loan that we approved last fall of $1 million. We've discussed this, and I'm looking forward to the mayor bringing forward before the end of the fiscal year transfers to take care of that to once again eliminate some minor debt, and I'm sure that the administration will do that. And then eventually, which we've been talking about quite a bit, whenever we sell the Cabot Street, and Councilor Sweeney, I'm curious about that too, how much will it be, and I think time will tell on that. But when we do sell those buildings in whatever capacity, we need to utilize those funds to offset these loan orders. State law allows for that, and we're looking at potentially over $30 million in loan orders between all these projects. So the more we draw down on free cash, the more we take the money from the sales and offset these loan orders, the better we'll fit it into our debt capacity and not cause problems, financial problems in the future. And finally, it's important to understand, even though this is how I see things at this point in time, times change, things change, so strategically we may have to adapt different strategies. But the bottom line to all this is, I believe it can work. I recommend we do it. We have to be careful on our future budgets over the next couple of years.
We need to use free cash to draw this down, these loan orders, and then the sale of the land proceeds to be used to offset the loan orders. Madam President, that concludes my comments. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. Councilor Houseman, I know you had your hand up before we went to Mr. Perry.
No, just as follow-up after Mr. Perry is finished.
He's finished.
No questions for Mr. Perry. Well, actually, I
was just going to you. I'll let you ask the question you want.
Fine. So, Mr. Perry, if you could elaborate on what discipline for future budgets means a little bit more specifically in terms of expanding services. Sure. Are you talking about personnel primarily or other things? And if you could just...
Yeah, for the most part, in my view, it's personnel. Now, I wrote to you to minimize. I mean, there are going to be some circumstances where the administration may need to do a couple of things here and there, but as you all know, we expanded our FTE count both on the school side and the municipal side in the current fiscal year by 26 FTEs. We could not do that in FY24 and FY25. So the answer to your question specifically, yeah, I think we have to keep down our personnel costs. I don't, unless it's something, I know we've had some conversations of a couple areas, but to expand by 26 FTEs, again, is something we could not do.
FTEs meaning?
Full-time employees.
Thank you for the members of the
Sure,
public.
my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Councilor Houseman, you had another question in mind before Mr. Perry spoke? Would you like to ask that?
No, that was my question for Mr. Perry. I just wanted to follow up with the mayor after Mr. Perry was completed with his comments, that's all.
I think, Mr. Perry, if you are wrapped
Sure.
up, we'll take Councilor's questions, and Mr. Perry can hop back up if one is for him. Councilor Houseman, we'll go to you for your question for the mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if I may. So I really sort of have two areas that I'd like to discuss with you, and Mr. Perry just spoke, so why don't we start with that, and that really has to do with the 5 considerations that Mr. Perry spelled out in his memo to the council, and I know that in working with the administration, you've had conversations with him and Mr. Ailes about these. I'll let you put it in your own words, but I'll try to offer a certain way. What is your level of commitment to following and being consistent with these 5 specific areas that Mr. Perry sort of lays out, especially that of sort of budget discipline going forward? I know that presents a challenge for all of us as we consider how to thread the needle on these.
I'm committed to partner with you all to make this all happen, to make it all work. I mean, we have collectively been able to do some pretty great things over the last decade. We've built our reserves. We continue to, I think, manage our operating budgets from our department heads right on up through you folks and me. We've been able to manage our operations extremely well, deliver great quality services throughout the city and our schools. We have been able to utilize free cash in the way that Mr. Perry was just articulating to get a number of smaller projects done, and then some of these projects that you might typically think need to be heavily bonded to where they don't need to be bonded as much. I think we've all collectively done great work in that way because we've listened to each other, we've worked with each other, we have great resources in Mr. Perry and Mr. Ailes and in their expertise. So I'm here. I mean, if your question is, am I committed to doing the things that we all need to do together to keep on delivering world-class services and manage these infrastructure projects and make this particular eminent domain taking that we have in front of you work? Yes.
So let me try to rephrase a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I support the project. I think it's a good project. Certainly have site control, and there's a lot of things we can do with that site control. But as you well know, under the charter, we have a strong mayor, weak council form of government, and you know, we certainly work together in partnership with each other, but ultimately it's the mayor's budget. And in my 12 years on the council, very, very rarely has the council ever found itself in a position of cutting even a single line item on the budget. So it is largely, notwithstanding working together on these matters, largely something controlled by whoever sits in the mayor's office. So I guess my question, I'll turn back to you. You're agreeable and sort of commit to the basic principles laid out in these 5 points in Mr. Perry. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, and I'm not trying to bind you per se, but I'm looking for, I guess, a little bit more from you in terms of, you have a lot more control than the council does over these things.
Mr. Ailes thinks it's pretty spot on. So I was about to ask Mr. Perry to come back up and repeat the 5, and maybe I should. And Mr. Perry, you want to come up and re-articulate those 5, and then I will affirmatively reinforce my commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're reminding him this is a council meeting. Let me repeat these.
Please, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me repeat this quickly again. Strategically, the city should use the vast majority of future free cash over the next 2 to 4 years to pay down the loan orders for the Cabot Street, McPherson Center, and if possible, the City Hall project, thus avoiding expensive borrowing costs. The administration, City Council needs to be more disciplined when preparing and approving both the FY24 and FY25 budgets. The city needs to have a strong certified balance sheet with appropriate free cash over the next 2 to 4 years so as to have enough free cash to help pay down a large segment of these loan orders. Beverly will need to raise their levy limit by 2.5% plus new growth over the next several years, as well as to minimize the expansion of both municipal and educational services during these periods. The administration needs to transfer appropriate unexpended FY23 funds, retained earnings, and/or SCSD undesignated fund balances for Beverly to eliminate the culvert loan of last year of $1 million. And finally, eventually, when they do sell Cabot Street, the buildings, the proceeds from those buildings need to be utilized to offset the loans that we're talking about for the City Hall, for McPherson, and obviously for the Cabot Street. Oh, well, number 6, and the finance director is 1,000% correct. Things change, so we have to be flexible to adapt depending on how things go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And so back to Councilor Hausman's question for me. I'd say a couple things. Much of what Mr. Perry says I agree with. But what if we blow the roof off of new growth a couple of years in a row? Right? I mean, then more is possible. Mr. Perry said we need to be more responsible in preparing our budgets. We need to continue to be responsible, right? We all have been responsible in preparing and passing budgets and then managing through the course of each year based on the realities of our needs and our incomes and our expenses. So, you know, I'm not going to say every single word, you got me, but in total, right, in terms of the guidance that's coming from Mr. Perry, yes, I understand it, and, you know, we've got, for example, the congressman is trying to get us $2 million in this next federal budget to help with the rec center project, the youth center project. Maybe that doesn't materialize, but if it does, that's helpful. And you know, if you start looking at certain things, and that goes to the 6th point of circumstances, right? So I think it's a thoughtful set of recommendations, and on balance, I'm with it. But you know, there's a lot of specificity there that we'll work through together because things can change.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll take that. I mean, I understand things change. I certainly say that as a counselor to the, you know, to my colleagues as well. You know, it's not just stability, it's also resilience in the face of budgetary changes. So So I'll take that.
Thanks.
By the same token, on sort of agreeable to principle, if you will, you talked about this project, so I'm not addressing the parking. I think, that I'm good with that. You said this project is about design and scale, and having a right-sized building. And you said we would work together to try to figure out what we do with site control vis-a-vis design and scale. I didn't have a chance to look it up, but I'm very certain that the facade is part of the building. Buildings in question are part of the National Historic Register Central Business District. And I heard you talk about we are going to decide like what a future building there might be. Now I think what happened behind what was at one point Casa de Moda, the building back there, is a very good design solution. But I'm very committed, as you know, we've talked about this before, maintaining the sorts of things Mr. Vincent talked about sort of the magic of downtown and what sort of makes it tick, and what Main Street's talked about, this is where we have, the block parties and the parades and everything else. It is part of our civic space, and the feel of the district is important as well. So when you talk about, we're going to decide, meaning down the road, what this might look like, tell me what your thoughts are about the preservation of the front of these buildings as part of what we decide going forward might be, because it's the administration that issues the RFP, not the city council.
True, but when we went through the Briscoe process, it was really a building of some strong degree of consensus around how to move forward with Briscoe. We'd be looking to do that here. I mean, my sense is the facade is something worth protecting, but I don't anticipate, should I be in this office over the next few years, I don't anticipate making that decision on my own. It doesn't make sense. Every one of you and people who came tonight and people who have interest and a stake in our downtown, I think need to be part of guiding that conversation and figure out where we land. But, I see value in the existing building for sure, and in the facade.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I know Councilor Bowen has some questions. Councilor Tender, did you have a direct follow-up for this topic?
It's in regards to Mr. Perry's, one of his things, and it's it's a quick question, really.
Sure.
In regards to number 3 and how we've now stated it 3 times, the 2.5% levy. And I think we've always, in the city, just assumed that it always automatically goes up 2.5%. I just want you to kind of remind me, was it the past 2 years that we haven't taken full levy capacity? Is that why this
Correct,
is
yes.
referenced?
No, that's a great question. In the last 2 years, we did slightly reduce the levy. It's a functionality of the assessors. It's not a functionality of the council or even the mayor. It's the assessors, though certainly the mayor's input. And we were able, given our circumstances, to slightly reduce the levy each year. We have approximately just short of, I believe, $1.4 million in excess levy capacity. So we were able to give some property tax relief from the 2.5% down. It still went up, of course, but not as much. So, but my view is, in order to make sure we have a robust balance sheet, which has a good, strong free cash position to help pay these loan orders down, I would strongly encourage the administration to work with the assessors and keep it at 2.5% for the next 2 years, so we can have a good, strong free cash to help us offset these loan orders.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
President.
Councilor Rotundo. As I said, I know Councilor Bowen has some questions. What I'd like to do is pause here, though, because I know it's getting later, and we do have at least one more member of the public who would like to speak, so I'd like to do another opportunity for members of the public, and then councilors will resume, and we'll start with Councilor Bowen. Thank you, Councilor Bowen. So Again, if members of the public are here who haven't yet gotten to speak, I have Jim Younger who has signed up, and then Mr. Johnson, I just saw your hand. So, Mr. Younger, Councilor Rotundo will keep time again, and so if you would, again, start with your name and address for the record, and up to 3 minutes, please.
I won't need 3 minutes. Fascinating conversation tonight, though. Jim Younger, 32 Buttman Street. Really here to just say I think this is an incredible opportunity. This opportunity, I'm in favor of this project. I think it's a visionary project. I commend everybody. I don't even know how we got to this point because I watched what was proposed for this site, really with hands tied, because there was nothing we could do about it. So I think now we have an opportunity, and it could be a model, not only for just parking. Parking's important, and certainly you can think about parking in terms of electric cars, lots of ways you can think about that, but certainly for preservation, and certainly for affordable housing, and certainly for all of the things that we are trying to do here in Beverly in terms of being a model for accomplishing all those ideas, and being a model for how private-public partnerships can actually work and do more than we could ever dream of. So things do change, but I wish as we move forward with this deal, there's a lot obviously to be uncovered, that we do make some commitments to a vision, much in the same way that the Briscoe School is sort of moving forward. And so I support this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Younger. Mr. Johnson? And of course, I want to mention members of the public, you're welcome to stay with us the entire time, but I do want to give the opportunity to speak. I know it's getting late, and that way if you need to be on your way, you can.
Thank you, Madam President. Peter Johnson, 677 Hale Street. Jim has echoed most of my thoughts, and I'm actually gratified to hear the questions from Councilor Sweeney, Councilor Hausman, about participation in the RFP process. My principal concern, I'm in favor of the project as long as, when it comes time to sell the property, there is robust public and city council participation in devising the RFP. My principal concerns are those about preservation, affordable housing, and maintaining the character of downtown. I don't know what assurances we can actually have, since there could be the same administration, there could be a change in administration, but I'd like us to be on the record as desiring robust participation by the community in expressing our desires for the RFP, rather than being presented with a pretty fully baked process, which is what I feel this is. I think the result is good, but I was totally startled by this coming out of the blue. Nobody keeps me tightly informed, nor should they. But this was it's been going on for 2 years, which is interesting. No discussion, public discussion that I'm aware of about potentials. I think we've gotten to a good place, but I hope we don't come up with something that's already pretty much a done deal. Take it or leave it. So I commend you for bringing it forward now, and I hope we're able to discuss it really fully when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Are there any other members of the public present who wish to speak in this public hearing? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam President. The solicitor just reminded me of something. If we do this, we've talked about 2 separate RFPs, one for development rights, air rights, say, or something of the like over the existing parking in the back, and a later RFP after that to sell off the existing building. Either and both of those would first require this city council vote and declare that the land, what's the term you used? Disposition, available for disposition, that the development rights in the back or the building in the front are available for disposition. So that brings additional process into any future work. And my desire for the for the RFPs and the look of things to be more of a shared collaborative process is because that's the right way to do it. And you still as well have those significant pieces of process that would need to be undergone as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the public. As I said, feel free to stay with us. Appreciate your time. Councillor Bowen, we'll go to you.
Thank you, and I'm glad we turned back to the public comment, because those are comments that I want to echo and would have made, so it also saves time. But I have a few questions, and we'll preface them with just echoing some of my colleagues in supporting the overall goals of this taking and the plans for financing it, but also some kind of hesitation, wanting to hear more before feeling comfortable voting on it, because as was just said, this is sort of a fully baked package, it seems, but without a ton of detail presented to us, and a lot more of that detail coming out tonight, which I think is really important. So just having enough time to sort through that detail, I think is an important part of the process. So most of my questions are about making sure that we are seizing the full opportunity in front of us, and that we have thought through the full cost. And to me, the cost is more than the $8 million. There's a lot of opportunity cost here as well of other things that could happen in that space or other alternatives we could look at. So really understanding that full cost to me is important, so that we ensure we then get the full public value out of that. So if we go into this thinking we have spent $8 million of city funds, and out of that we get 108 parking spaces and a spot for City Hall, does that math make sense? To me, that's a too narrow a view on it, because we're actually giving up a lot more and therefore should be getting a lot more. And I think that plays into the process that we will go through if this advances around those two RFPs. And that's actually a big point that was new to me tonight in thinking about separating out those two processes. So I think my first question is just a clarification on the proposed timelines for those and how that impacts the finances. Because it's sounding like the City Hall usage means that an RFP for the commercial space has to be pushed out 3 to 4 years from today, but that development over the parking lot could be RFP'd within the year, and development could start sooner if that those are separate processes in the administration's mind. Is that?
Sure, they are separate. We expect that we'll need to vacate this building mid to late next spring. We'll probably need to move pretty quickly on securing services with somebody to help us with the build out. It'll take some time. And then, you figure about 3 years from now to not needing it anymore. So until we don't need it anymore, we can't really ask you to declare it available for disposition and then RFP, right? So, but that gives us a good amount of time to work through what an RFP, what our goals really are and what an RFP would look like. The affordable housing piece, if you, and I know you folks have been following the progress of the Briscoe project. We wish these could all happen more quickly, but when you look at a project like that, the biggest piece of funding comes through the federal 9% low-income housing tax credits, but there are about 7 or 8 other pieces to the financing, and it takes time for these to be applied for, and sometimes you're queued up because there are more worthy projects in this state than there are, bundles of credits coming through from the federal government. So it typically takes a number of years to go from somebody winning an RFP to being able to line up all the pieces of the financing to be able to then, get themselves moving forward with a construction team and break ground and build. So I would say that, sure, in the next year would be a time frame that we'd be looking at all that in. And an RFP for that could likely go out well before an RFP for the existing building in front.
So I also...
Sorry, Counselor, I'm going to pause you only because it looked like Mr. Ailes had a comment on your question.
Perfect.
I did just want to add a finance angle to that question, which is the 3-year time frame that we're occupying the building is actually a benefit to us because during that time, as a city, we're able to pay down the outstanding debt. Obviously, if we're disposing of assets, we can't carry tax-exempt debt on an asset we don't own. So that delayed process that the mayor outlined in terms of the affordable housing component, as well as our occupying the building, actually buys us time to pay that down and get it into a manageable package that we ultimately can either pay down or borrow slightly for if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Councilor Bowen.
Great, thank you. So I had a couple of questions that weren't covered yet about the parking needs. Some have been covered, but one is just, I know there was a downtown parking study update commissioned to help identify where those needs are headed, what creative solutions there might be. I know the prospect of losing these spaces initially kicked off a lot of really good creative conversations about, satellite parking spots at, using office parking for Friday nights where you have complementary uses where it's busy for one thing during the day and busy with different people in the evenings, ways to improve, last mile transportation, make more of a walkable corridor. So I was excited about all that and don't want us to lose that just because we're able to keep a parking lot. So I'm curious what the status of that study is, what other creative ideas are coming up, how we might keep some of those alive because we will need them regardless of preserving this particular lot.
Thank you, Councilor. Ms. Wynn.
Thank you. Yes, so the parking study is still underway. The first part of it was an existing conditions analysis, so basically existing parking conditions, which we did or the parking consultant did on 2 different weekends in the fall. We used that information as part of the decision-making process to inform this decision, kind of looking and seeing that the parking utilization was, I think, high enough in certain situations that we couldn't afford to give up the parking. Right? That kind of informed the decision from that sense. And then the consultant is working now on the second phase of that project, which is the assessment of parking supply and demand. So they're starting to dig into what the future demand is based on our uses and the zoning in the area, and also looking into some of those other alternatives that you suggested, shared parking, other kind of maybe strategies that they might come up and suggest for parking, best practice parking solutions, given our conditions and what they know about our community. We did end up getting a grant for that parking study after we commissioned the parking study, so the grant that we have to have all this work done by June 30th. We're also hoping to continue the consultant's work to help them do some work specifically on our zoning ordinance after the fact. So that wouldn't be part of the grant, but would be just additional, there's some additional add-ons that they're willing to do. So looking at how we can tweak our parking requirements, bike parking, things like that, to kind of supplement the development regulations in the city. So that's where we stand. I'm hoping the final report will be in hand well before June 30th, but June 30th is our deadline for the grant. So that's kind of where we stand.
Thank you, Ms. Wynn.
Thank you. And I think given that those initial findings of at least current conditions were part of the decision-making process in putting this forward, I would love to see some of those results. I think for us to be able to justify, supporting $8 million towards this project and the taking, having that full picture to be able to share back to constituents as well would be helpful. Okay. I have a couple other non-parking related questions. Related to the financial trade-offs, I'm curious about some of the other savings that we might realize. It's been talked about, not leasing commercial space for City Hall employees, but we have been leasing the parking lot, so converting that to ownership, does that have financial implications over the long term or short term?
Mr. Ailes.
Sure. Great question. We do lease that lot at roughly about, hold on here. about $40,000 to $45,000 a year are payments made to the Dana family for those spots. So we would avoid those costs in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then the sort of flip side of that is what we may lose by having that property be publicly owned. So there's the property taxes they're currently paying, and then any new growth that we might have been anticipating from a 100-plus unit building or other potential redevelopment there. So from my perspective, those costs may well be worth it if we're getting enough affordable housing, artist space, as was mentioned, parking, things of public value, but just want to be really clear on the public cost too.
Sure, fair. Currently, the parcel, both the dollar store lot as well as kind of the Chapman Street lot that's on the other side of Chapman there, for FY23 had an assessed taxation of $47,000. The way the levy works, though, is that as that property becomes city-owned, the levy doesn't go down by that amount. It's still tax revenue that we receive in a future year. It just gets dispersed out through the rest of the tax base and adjusts the rates accordingly. So there's no effectively lost revenue by the city owning it. Now, you asked about the foregone potential new growth opportunity, and that's certainly something to consider. What I can tell you is that, based on what was proposed, and you look around kind of the immediate downtown area, maybe a comparable building might be something like 211 Rantoul, which is the larger of the two. Yeah, the canvas buildings. So that is, roughly the same type of development, type of size. And that brought in about 250 to 300,000 a year in new growth. So that to give you a sense of what is foregone in terms of revenue. Now, there would also be on the backside of it if and when the city decides to dispose of the development rights behind the building and the commercial front, those in some form would be developed, which would ultimately provide new growth at that time.
Thank you. And then, while I think the ability to use the space for City Hall renovations is a timely coincidence that works out well, to me, the potential to solve traffic problems, parking problems, and control a prime downtown location for public priorities like affordable housing might be enough, and if that could be accelerated, would be well worth it, without some of the costs of retrofitting for City Hall. And so we talked about having looked at and evaluated alternatives for parking. Could you talk a little bit about the alternatives for City Hall, given other city properties like the new police station, the school buildings that have some administrative offices, the places where there are already some city offices, in the GAR Hall, the senior center? I know a lot of spots are crowded and also needing work. City properties like the Carriage House, like the Golf and Tennis Club, like any place where we have space and the ability for people to work in a hybrid fashion. Just sort of thinking about this assumption that 18,000 square feet is necessary to be leased in prime locations, and whether there are alternatives, which may not impact the overall sort of public need for the taking or the final cost of it, but to me, it do make a big difference in the public benefits, potentially, sort of what we get for that.
Maybe I can just start. You might want to add to this, but when you look at the city's own parcels that we currently occupy, office space is a premium, and that's why collectively we've decided to invest some initial money to do feasibility schematic design for this project here at City Hall and bring some of the offices back to City Hall that are currently kind of creating very dense work areas like the senior center, for example. So when you look at other city properties, that really isn't a luxury we have necessarily to relocate 18,000 square feet of office space. So what we found was we were quickly looking to some of the larger property owners in the city as alternatives, and maybe does it make sense to parse things out into a bunch of different locations or keep it more centrally located. I can say that, you know, having multiple locations around, you will invest in building out those infrastructures, which in some cases will be more than if it's centrally located, because you've got a lot more IT infrastructure, for example, that needs to go in multiple locations, and running fiber and all these things that quickly add up to the overall price tag. So you very quickly start looking at some of the larger, like I said, property owners in the city, of which there aren't a ton. And so the comps were fairly easy to get a sense of what we thought our exposure was in terms of relocation costs to some of those larger alternatives. But, you know, I think as you look at what you're suggesting in terms of an alternative, you very quickly kind of come to that fatal flaw analysis where you say, is it really gonna save us time, energy, money, because there's costs there for labor, coordination, organization, never mind the efficiency of our operations, which a lot of what we do here is designed to be efficient and run down the hall and do something, as opposed to getting in a car and going to another building and things of that nature. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into kind of our logic behind that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything. Okay.
Maybe just one more, sort of related to the use of space and timelines. Councilor Rand asked about the artist space sort of currently and going forward. And so we've heard that unfortunately they have all moved out already. But I wasn't totally clear on whether the 18,000 square foot comparison is the floor plan of the first floor or is the whole building. It sounded like that it's maybe not decided yet whether the second floor would be needed. And I would love to see some other use still coexist with City Hall if that second floor could continue to serve the arts community while City Hall is functioning there in a temporary space. And so I'm curious about the feasibility of that and whether that's been discussed. But I think for me, again, seeing those as much public value as we can extract from every day that the city owns that property is really important. So, and that, you know, to me, some of the value is being right in the heart of the arts district, having that real activated use, maybe not just 9 to 5, and, you know, continuing to keep that building as an anchor, even in this sort of probably messy 4 or 5 years. Because, you know, right now it looks like a vacant building and would like to see it look alive for as much of the time as we can.
So I think that...
Mr. Mayor.
I think we could utilize every square foot of that space, including the second floor, and still be a little tight on running our operations. So I think if we go in there, our intention is to utilize it all for city needs for those 2 years.
Thank you. I'll second, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. I sense, and because we will also have some time to have conversation in finance and property when the public hearing portion is closed, but I do sense that most councilors had a chance to ask questions. I know Councilor Rand and Councilor Houseman have.
I have a 30-second comment, so.
All right, we'll go to Councilor Rand and then we'll come to you for your 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. I'll try to keep mine in 30 seconds as well. I have two...
Doesn't have to be a competition, Councilor.
Okay, well, I have two quick questions, follow-up questions through you, Council President, to Mr. Perry. One is, in 30 seconds or less, can you talk about the trade-offs that we're going to see for this? I mean, I know it's only $2 million in this proposal, but the trade-offs we'll see in that expense as it would affect the capital expenditure plan this year and going forward? Then my second question is just, I would love a little clarification around, I don't want to just put out there that we expanded the budget by 26 FTEs without also knowing that I believe some of those were school staff that were kind of requirements in terms of our educational contractual obligations for students. So I just want to make sure, I don't want the public to think we're just sort of adding full-time employees willy-nilly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rand.
I can't do that in 30 seconds. So with regard to the capital expenditure, the goal of a capital expenditure on debt is to try to keep from spikes happening, okay? So the administration does a pretty good job on that, and if we draw down free cash and draw down these loan orders, I anticipate a slight, which is the way you want to do it, gradual increase, trying to keep match with 7-8% of our overall general fund budget. And based upon my analysis of that, I think we can do that if we draw down free cash. With regard to the second question, I do know it's 26 FTEs. One of your colleagues asked me to research that. My recollection, and the mayor or Mr. Ailes, on the municipal side, as I recall, I think it was 3 police officers, the new assistant finance director, and I think we had a half-time person at the Council of Aging. I think that's how that went on the municipal side. If I'm wrong, correct me. On the school side, it was 21.5 FTEs. I do not know the specific answer to your question. We'd have to defer to the superintendent over there or something. I don't recall whether it was because of collective bargaining or whatever. I know there was, my recollection, there was a lot to do with the social well-being of the students because of the pandemic. I think there was a large investment in that area, but the rest of it, Council, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you, Councillor. I'll just add, I guess, that if my memory serves, some of those were at the time ESSER-funded positions, which of course any grant funding does become absorbed, but as I recall, some of the school side expense were post-pandemic ESSER funding. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Councillor Houseman.
Hopefully, Councilor Rotundo's not timing me. Yeah,
he is now. We all are.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I really appreciate Councilor Bowen's filling out the conversation around opportunity costs. I think is really important. Really important piece of that. And, you know, I'll decide for ourselves whether or not we're satisfied with, you know, with the answers. I guess, you know, when you talked about opportunity costs, the way I think of it is largely, notwithstanding, you know, the conversation about them, those opportunity costs lie in the future and are unknowns. And this is an opportunity for what I think, I mean, you know, when I engage with the mayor, I do try to both understand and get commitments from him. I think he appreciates the fact that we have that back and forth. But I want to compliment him. I think this is a master stroke of opportunities seized, and it will require us to make difficult decisions, and especially the mayor budgetarily make difficult decisions that we will have to live with in order to accomplish bringing together all of these things. But I do want to compliment him and his team on the work of trying to bring all these together and presenting them to the council in a package. And so I guess I'll end it there, because I know that the mayor and I go back and forth on me trying to sort of pin him down, I guess, if you will. But I want to be clear that site control and the opportunity that the site control brings for the multiplicity, and I won't repeat them, the multiplicity of goals that lie before us in the next 3 to 4 years are really, really fantastic in this proposal. And I know, I feel very reassured, because as Chair of Finance and Property, Mr. Perry and I have been talking about this for a while, that he has really worked through what this means and what, that this will work if we are disciplined about how we go forward. That's got to be at least more than 30 seconds, but I'll be quiet at that point.
Thank you, Councilor House. What I'd like to do, as we're moving toward the close of the public hearing portion of this conversation, I'd like to ask just one more opportunity. If there are members of the public here who have not gotten a chance to speak, who would like to speak in the public hearing, is anyone present who would like 3 minutes? Okay. Seeing none, I will close this public hearing. We'll refer Order 120 back to the Subcommittee on Finance and Property for conversation this evening. Thank you again to members of the public who were here earlier in the evening, at this portion of the evening, have been watching on BevCam. Your input, your time, and your attention is incredibly valuable, and the same for members of the public who are following the public hearing on order number 75 as well. It's much appreciated. Members of the council, Public Services completed their work in committee time. I know Legal Affairs and Finance and Property both have one matter, actually Legal has two now, to take up. One is related to the public hearing we just closed, so we'll begin with Finance and Property and Committee of the Whole together if we could. And I would entertain a motion then to take a break for committee work.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We will move to have Finance and Property meet first. We'll stay here in council chambers, and then Legal Affairs following.
Are we staying in our seats, or?
Do you want to switch with Councilor House?
I'll do
We
whatever
can
you
group
want.
together.
Yep.
Switch. Council President, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
We have before us Order 120. Before I ask for...
Committee of the Whole.
Oh, I'm sorry, also a call to order Committee of the Whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
have more practice at this than I do. Before we have any discussion, Mr. Perry, is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't sort of already covered, at least for purposes of the subcommittee considerations?
Mr. Chairman, no, I think I've said enough. The only thing I'd say is I do recommend the proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to ask any questions or make comments in your role as a subcommittee member, or would you like to move to a motion?
Thank you. I just had a brief comment, and I appreciate the space to make it. Obviously, in the full council, the president doesn't typically comment. So I guess I'll just say that I've appreciated the conversation. Many of the questions that councilors asked tonight are questions that I would have been interested to hear answers to, and so I'm glad they were asked. I personally share a strong interest in the desire to find artist space at some point going forward, or to think creatively about the use of the building. Mr. Mayor, you and I have had conversations about that, so that won't be a surprise. I also just want to mention, as others have, that I think it is an incredible opportunity, not only for the moment, but for what we might want to do as a city that really could be creative for our downtown. Councilor Rand, you mentioned that, that it really could open up lots of possibilities. I'll mention that one need that I hear expressed quite a lot for residents who live downtown, particularly if you want to have a truly walkable community, having a place where people can get groceries in the downtown if they don't have a car is really important. And so we've heard over and over tonight, we can't decide right now what the building will be, but I think it opens up possibilities for us to think about housing, artist space, creating an even more walkable downtown. So in that regard, I'm supportive and also very hopeful for what might yet be to come out of this as well. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I would entertain a motion on Order 120, which is the proposed order for an appropriation for the taking of an eminent domain of the subject properties, and to appropriate the sum of $8 million for that purpose.
So moved.
I second the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 2-0. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are, Committee of the Whole is adjourned. Entertain a motion to adjourn Finance and Property.
So moved.
I second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Counselor Rand.
I have a question.
In legal affairs, does 120 have to be voted on as a full, the funding?
It's a good question.
I don't know. Should I ask that in legal affairs? Okay.
Yes, please.
What's that? Okay. Yes. Call to order Legal Affairs Committee and also Committee of the Whole. Okay, we will take up, actually I have a question. Order number 75, do we have to wait for the planning board to get back to us on their, 75 is the rezoning of the property at 8 Summit Ave from RMD to CC.
So they have 21 days to make a recommendation to you. If you don't receive a recommendation within 21 days, then you can vote.
And we go forward. That sounds so familiar. I feel like we just did that. Okay, so we can hold on to that then. Order number 119, and I also, Solicitor Williams may have a question for you as well. Order 119 is the proposed order approving the taking by eminent domain pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 79 of the properties located at 218 to 226 Cabot Street and 8 Chapman Street. So I just want to confirm that Legal Affairs could vote on this in advance of the full council voting for the funding for that property.
Yes.
Okay, all right, excellent. Any questions or comments from committee members? Okay, in that case, I would accept a motion to recommend that the council approve order number 119.
Second.
Or-
So moved, sorry, jeez. Second.
Those in favor?
I'll jump quicker next time. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0, and that's all we have on our agenda. So I would accept a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole, please.
So moved.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. Committee of the whole is adjourned, and a motion to adjourn legal affairs committee.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Legal affairs is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll call the full council back to order. And that brings us to reports from committees. Ms. Kent.
Order number 120, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom referred the matter regarding a proposed order approving an appropriation that will be used to pay for the taking by eminent domain of the properties located at 218, 226 Cabot Street, also known as 218, 224 Cabot Street, and 8 Chapman Street, also known as 18 Federal Street. The order would authorize the city to appropriate the sum of $8 million. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. And Solicitor Williams, just, I'm clarifying my own memory, this is the order that requires a 2/3 vote of the council?
It's the appropriation order.
Yes. Thank you. So just for members of the public following, this vote requires a 2/3 vote of the council. That means to carry, it needs at least 6 votes. Are there questions or comments on this one? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. I still have questions about the overall plan. And so understanding that the rest of the council may be ready to vote tonight, I'm not planning to put a hold on this order, but do want to say that I would have a lot more confidence in the process if all 9 of us were here and if we had more than just a few minutes after the public hearing to discuss. So I just want to put that out there. I understand that the timeline for this process overall has been condensed, so we were not left with much time for discussion. And I think that that puts us in the position of having to make a decision based on the really exciting, compelling vision, and just getting some of the details now. So I think given that process, understanding that should this go forward, there would be at least 2 more points at which the council would have a say in the future direction of this site, future direction of the parking lot area and space above it. I, for one, would love to see maybe preservation of some parking, but real maximization of that site. And I want to make sure that we have enough time for that conversation. So if this moves forward at this stage, I just want to say loud and clear that I would not be supportive of moving those next steps forward until after a public process and more than just hour or 2 of public hearing in the city council. So when it comes time for those votes on declaring the properties available for disposition, I would not be able to support that spur of the moment just because there are some benefits to be had. I would really want that process to look different. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Councilor Bowen. Other questions or Councilor Houseman?
Yeah, I just, I want to be supportive of Councilor Bowen's intention regarding wanting to have more time to consider such a weighty subject. I have found myself totally in her position saying, should I put a hold on this or not? I feel like I'm so time constrained. We've heard from the administration there is a time constraint here. And feeling frustrated about the magnitude of the vote and having it sort of like so tight in terms of, because this is a very large vote for us in terms of the consequences going forward. So I support the project. As I said, I do think this is visionary, but to the degree the administration can loop us in and give us more opportunities in the future, I understand where Councilor Bowen is coming from, so I just want to be supportive of that.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman. Any other questions or comments, members of the council? Okay. The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. And if you could, for either way that you're voting, please just keep your hand up until I have a chance to make sure to count clearly for the 2/3. All those in favor, aye. Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Well, that was easy. To count, rather, not the decision, to count. Thank you. That carries 8-0. Good.
Order number 121, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a $5,000 grant from Citizens Corp Program Community Emergency Response Team to the Emergency Management Task Force, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Approve the request.
Questions or comments?
It's checked off wrong, so.
I'm sorry, what order is this?
Sorry, this is the grant for the emergency response team.
Okay, thank you.
Are there questions or comments on this one? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0. And although Ms. Barrett, our city grants director, isn't here with us in the room tonight, I do want to say we have several grants that we are considering, and just thanks to Ms. Barrett and her team for the work that they do. Thank you. And we're almost to that one, right? Okay, thank you. And thank you for the work that they do. It's always gratifying to be able to accept grants that help to fund important things in our city. Ms. Kent.
Order number 122, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a $23,700 grant from the Mass Cultural Council to support the local cultural council, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 123, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a donation of a 2017 Nissan Pathfinder from Jonathan Palm to the Beverly Fire Department, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Thank you. And our Fire Chief Peter O'Connor is here. Chief, anything that you wanted to mention about this donation or the work that you and your team may do with a donated vehicle like this?
Or less.
We've heard that before.
Chief, for you, you can have a minute.
Madam President, thank you very much. No, I don't want to take any much of your time. It's been a long night for you. I appreciate this. What we'll do is we'll cut this car up for training. We'll have some new guys that are going to be starting up in July, so it'll get put to good use.
Thank you very much. It sounds like a really creative kind of donation to be made to support training in your department. Thank you. Are there other questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 124, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a request for the FY 2023 appropriated funds to pay prior year invoices totaling $60,980.04. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 135, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding National Grid Plan 307-58714 to install electric conduits on Lovett Street. Have considered the matter and set a public hearing on 5/15 at 8 o'clock.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal to set the public hearing on Order 135 for our regular meeting, May 15th at 8 p.m. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 102, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding an appointment for Purvi Harley at 8 James Street to serve on the Human Rights Committee. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 119, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a proposed order approving the taking by eminent domain pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 79, of the properties located at 218-226 Cabot Street, also known as 218-224 Cabot Street, and 8 Chapman Street, also known as 18 Federal Street. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? I wasn't sure about hands in there.
Oh, no, I said.
You're all good, okay. That carries 8-0, thank you.
Order number 126, Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a new application for one livery license for Santo Pichardo Martinez. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that carries 8-0.
Order number 127, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a renewal application for a secondhand dealer's license for Alina Nagazian Gallery, have considered the matter, recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, that carries 8-0.
Order number 128, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding a renewal application for secondhand dealer's licensing for Beverly Bootstraps, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that carries 8-0.
Order number 129, from the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a renewal application for a secondhand dealer's license for the Nyan Group, Inc., DBA Cash Point, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that carries 8-0.
Order number 130, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a renewal application for pawnbroker's license for Nyan Group, Inc., DBA Cash Point, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that carries 8-0.
Order number 131, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding a renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Stephen Wright, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted with the condition that the police department has approved.
Thank you. Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order as stipulated by Legal Affairs. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 132, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a renewal application for an ice cream truck vending permit for Odwa Catabeth, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted with the condition that they are approved by the Beverly Police Department.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order as stipulated by Legal Affairs. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 133, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a renewal application for petroleum storage registrations for 2023, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the licenses be granted with approval of the Beverly Fire Department.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order as stipulated by Legal Affairs. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 8-0.
Order number 125, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a proposed order approving the transfer of the care, custody, management, and control of 9 city-owned parcels of land in the area of Post Swamp Lane to the Conservation Commission, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Thank you very much. I'll say questions or comments, and I see that Councilor Houseman, you have a question or a comment.
Thank you. I don't want to belabor the point. We ran out of time at Legal Affairs, and I had a question for Assistant City Solicitor Dole.
Conveniently, Mr. Dole had already moved
Yes,
to
he
the
has.
microphone.
So thank you, through you. It strikes me that, to pick up where we left off, the care, custody, management, and control of these parcels by the Conservation Commission is something of a legal fiction to enable these to be used for what I understand, I guess, is going to be active recreation. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, can you explain?
So, for the rest of the council, what this relates to is Birch Plains Park, which I think everyone knows is the soccer fields that are out by the airport. Prior to those being soccer fields and being known as Birch Plains Park, it was known as the Vitale site, which was used for a number of years of storage of fly ash and construction materials. The city took that by tax taking in 1980, and then in 1988 transferred the management and control of that parcel to the Conservation Commission. In the early 2000s, there was some discussion between the city and the Concom about trying to maximize the use of that parcel. So in 2006, the Concom approved of the use of those fields for active recreation and ball fields, which allowed the construction of the soccer fields out there. The condition of, one of the conditions of that approval was that the city would transfer to the control of the Concom an equivalent amount of acreage to be under the Concom's control. So there was an attempt to identify some parcels out on what's known as Pole Swamp Lane in Beverly Farms, and for some reason there was about almost an equivalent amount of acreage identified in 7 city-owned parcels. For some reason, that just wasn't accomplished between the vote in 2006 and now. And when that was discovered, the city wanted to carry through with its obligation that it committed to in 2006 to transfer an equivalent amount of acreage to the control of the Concom. So I was able to actually identify a little bit more, building on the work of former DPS Commissioner Dick McNeil. Identify about 26.6 acres of city-owned land out there that is not currently under the Concom's control. They have about 62 acres right now under their control in the area of Pole Swamp Lane. This would add another 26.6 acres to that land that is under Concom control out there, which is primarily landlocked, old wood lots, pasture lots, things like that. Parcels that the city has taken deed to through the tax-taking process over the last century. So this is not on any current or future use of Birch Plains Park. This is just tying up a loose end that the city committed to transferring these parcels in 2006, and just didn't happen. So when I found out about it, I dug back into Dick McNeil's files, handwritten deeds, references to sheep pastures and whatnot, and was able to come up with some additional land that we could transfer to their control.
So I understand now this is not part of land that's going to be used for active recreation. That essentially.
No, the Pole Swamp lands, these would be as the order, and the process would be, it is city-owned land, it would not be deeded in any way, but the process is, the order would be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, so there would be a record that those generally city-owned parcels now would be under the control of the Concom for, quote, conservation purposes, the proper promotion and development of natural resources and the protection of the watershed resources in the area of Pole Swamp Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Dole.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Thank you very much, Mr. Dole. So the question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 8-0.
Order number 326, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding the Beverly Regional Airport, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. They want to recommend back to the council to be put into the Finance and Property Committee.
Thank you very much. So we'll refer that to Finance and Property, please.
That's all I got.
Do you want it?
Thank you very much.
Services as well?
You can come back to that. You do what you do.
Councilors, are there any announcements or reminders from any members of the council? Well, I will just mention that at our next regular meeting on May 15th, as members of the public just heard, we did set a public hearing for 8 p.m. on Order 135. That is a national grid plan to install electric conduits on Lovett Street. But I also want to mention that at the outset of that meeting, we will have an opportunity to have members of our Beverly Police Department here. Councilors will remember that we had the chance to do this for our fire department, where members who were new members or promoted, especially during the pandemic, were not able to have moments of recognition with their family, were able to have those. And so this is our opportunity to do that for members of our police department. And so that will be at the outset of our regular meeting. And so we'll look forward to having those members and members of their family and members of the public with us as well. Oh, thank you. Yes. Ms. Nguyen is reminding me that tomorrow evening here in City Council chambers, there is a presentation, informational presentation about accessory dwelling units. That's ADUs. You may have heard them referred to that way. To clarify, Ms. Nguyen, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a presentation, so members of the public should come prepared to learn, but this is not a public hearing, and there's nothing for a vote at this time. So just so that people know what they're coming to, but it will be a great opportunity to learn more about ADUs and where our city might be going with that as well. Thank you for that reminder, Ms. Nguyen. Any other reminders or announcements from members of the council? Or people standing in the corner of the room? With that, I would first thank Kim in the booth for BevCam. As always, it's a great way to make sure members of the public can be following and be with us. I was at the senior center today for some community drop-in hours, and they were mentioning how appreciative they are that they can use BevCam from wherever they are to follow our meetings. So thank you, Kim. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 8-0, and we are adjourned. See you next time.